After Bai Yueguang returned to China, Mr. Fu was dumped by his wife. Nanxi has always known that Fu Ciyan has a beloved Bai Yueguang in his heart. After 3 years of marriage, she thought she could at least have a place in Fu Ciyan's heart. But she drank so much that her stomach bled for him, and that night he left her to meet his beloved Bai Yueguang. Nanxi took back her true love, left the wedding ring, and dumped Fu Ciyan without any entanglement. Everyone celebrated for President Fu for finally getting rid of the trouble. But later, someone saw the unattainable President Fu kneeling down on a snowy night and begging, "Nanxi, please don't leave." Chapter 1, Their First Love is Returning. What's wrong? Haven't I satisfied you yet? A deep and magnetic voice sounded above when Nanxi's head as a warm palm grasped her fingers, which had been tracing circles on the man's abs. When Nanxi looked up, her eyes glistening with moisture, her pearly teeth biting lightly on her lower lip. Before she could say anything, Fu Ciyan lowered his head and kissed her lips, leaving her no chance to speak. The temperature in the air surged once again. Amidst the rise and fall, when Nanxi clung to Fu Ciyan, murmuring softly, "Yang. Yang." Fu Ciyan's body tensed, and his deep eyes darkened in an instant. When Nanxi was slightly dazed, not understanding why he had suddenly stopped. Buzz buzz. The hand that had been supporting the back of when Nanxi's head reached for the phone on the bedside table. Fu Ciyan released her without hesitation and stood up, showing no reluctance. When Nanxi panted slightly, trying to steady her emotions, she subconsciously glanced at Fu Ciyan's phone, and the familiar avatar struck her like lightning. "Yang Ji, my flight arrives at midnight. Don't forget to pick me up tilde." It was Ji Jiao, the woman known as Fu Ciyan's adopted sister, the foster daughter of the Fu family. When Nanxi had never met Ji Jiao, but she knew that Ji Jiao was Fu Ciyan's first love, the person he held dearest in his heart. She knew that Fu Ciyan had always loved Ji Jiao. If not for the ethical constraints preventing them from being together, he wouldn't have married her. For the past 3 years that Ji Jiao had been abroad, their marriage had been peaceful. But now that she was back, it seemed that when Nanxi's time as Mrs. Fu was coming to an end. "Yang, can you not go?" When Nanxi's voice was soft, with an almost undetectable tremor of fear. Her pale fingers clutched at his sleeve, not even realizing the pleading in her tone. She was unwilling. She still wanted to hold on. Fu Ciyan paused, methodically buttoning up his shirt. Then, he coldly flung her hand away. The passion from earlier had vanished completely, leaving only indifference. He was like a different person from the man who had just been on top of her. "Stay out of things that don't concern you. We have a banquet to attend later. Get yourself ready and don't make me wait." A stabbing pain spread through when Nanxi's heart as she knelt on the bed, breathless, trying to calm herself. Ji Jiao's innocent face flashed through her mind. Ji Jiao was an orphan. Her only brother had died protecting Fu Ciyan. The Fu family had taken her in, earning themselves a good reputation in the capital, and Fu Ciyan had gained a sister. Perhaps out of guilt, Fu Ciyan had indulged her in every way and cared for her as she grew up. On Ji Jiao's 18th birthday, she had confessed her love for Fu Ciyan in a high-profile manner, throwing their forbidden love into the public eye and pinning Fu Ciyan to the pillar of shame. That very night, his parents had sent Ji Jiao abroad. But Fu Ciyan's reputation was beyond salvation because he had taken all the blame himself, publicly stating that he had fallen for someone he shouldn't have. Ji Jiao was cleared of all wrongdoing, but no woman in the capital dared to marry Fu Ciyan anymore. The Fu family's business suffered, and their rivals seized the opportunity to smear his name. At that time, when Nanxi's father sent her to the Fu family, making her Fu Ciyan's wife and salvaging his reputation. In their 3 years of marriage, there had been love. They had spent 2 sweet years together. But over the past year, aside from being passionate in bed, Fu Ciyan had become distant like an unyielding block of ice, his coldness stabbing at her heart at every moment. He hadn't always been like this. "Madam, sir is waiting outside. You'd better hurry." With a loud bang, Aunt Yu pushed open the bedroom door, her tone blunt and disrespectful. When Nanxi caught the contempt in her gaze but was too exhausted to argue. She changed into fresh clothes, her steps slightly unsteady. The chilly air outside made her wrap a plush shawl around herself before heading downstairs. A familiar Maybach was parked at the villa's entrance. Her husband of 3 years was leaning against the car, talking on the phone. The light grey suit he wore was perfectly tailored, accentuating his broad shoulders and slender waist. Fu Ciyan's face could not simply be described as handsome. His deep-set eyes, sharp jawline, and natural air of dominance made it hard for people to look directly at him. Who would have thought that a man as untouchable as a high mountain-s snow would once murmur baby to her in the quiet of the night? Gentle and affectionate. But that was a year ago. Ever since she had accidentally broken the ceramic cup Ji Jiaojiao had gifted him, Fu Ciyan had never looked at her the same way again. A silent war without gunfire was the most devastating. She walked toward him quietly. Sensing her presence, Fu Ciyan glanced sideways, his brows slightly furrowed. When Nanxi's features were stunning, making her one of the most beautiful women in the capital. Her classic, cold temperament made her the center of attention wherever she went. She wore a vintage cheongsam today, the light blue fabric hugging her delicate curves. Though the dress was modest, covering her arms and legs, her slender waist and graceful figure still exuded a subtle allure. For some reason, Fu Ciyan found it irritating. "You're wearing this?" When Nanxi nodded. "It's cold today. I get sick in a gown." The dresses Fu Ciyan had his secretary prepare were all sleeveless, backless, and revealing. With the temperature in single digits, she didn't want to freeze just to attend a dinner. Fu Ciyan said nothing more. He opened the car door for her, instinctively shielding her head. When Nanxi froze momentarily before lowering her gaze, forcing out a bitter smile. Even when they were about to divorce, he still acted like a gentleman toward his soon-to-be ex-wife. Tonight, Fu Ciyan had arranged a dinner with Lin Corporation's CEO. As his wife, she was expected to attend. The car ride was silent. Upon entering the banquet hall, when Nanxi naturally linked her arm with Fu Ciyan's, playing the part of a loving couple. The familiar scent of him lingered near her, making it hard to resist falling into old feelings. The moment they stepped into the private dining room, all eyes turned to them. Lin Zong, a middle-aged man with a round belly and thinning hair, beamed with enthusiasm. His gaze briefly lingered on Wen Nanxi before he chuckled. "President Fu, long time no see. And this is..." Fu Ciyan's expression remained indifferent, but he instinctively pulled Wen Nanxi behind him. "My wife, Wen Nanxi." Wen Nanxi smiled politely and nodded. No one paid much attention to her. Everyone knew that Fu Ciyan had married her only because he couldn't have the woman he truly loved. And rumor had it that the woman who once captivated the entire capital was returning. When Nanxi's position as Mrs. Fu wouldn't last much longer. As the drinks flowed and the atmosphere grew livelier, CEO Lin, his face flushed with alcohol, turned to Fu Ciyan with a smirk. "President Fu, signing this contract is easy, just have your wife drink a few rounds with us, and the deal is sealed." When Nanxi frowned. She had a weak stomach and had just undergone an endoscopy the day before. She couldn't drink. She instinctively turned to Fu Ciyan. But all she saw was his cold, indifferent gaze. Laughter erupted at the table. "It's just a couple of drinks. President Fu, don't tell me you're reluctant. Come on, Miss Wen, don't be so uptight." When Nanxi gripped her wine glass tightly, biting her lip as she whispered, Yang, I don't feel well." Fu Ciyan's face darkened instantly. Drink. Chapter 2. Hospitalized for gastric bleeding, but President Fu was taking Bai Yueguang back to China. Her lips were bitten white by her, when Nanxi's eyes were full of hurt, and her heart was sore and uncomfortable. Fu Ciyan always knew that she had a bad stomach and a low alcohol tolerance, but he still treated her like this. Just because she broke a ceramic cup, did she become an unforgivable sinner? President Lin had already walked to the side of Wen Nanxi. Fu Ciyan's attitude made him more unscrupulous. There was even a bit of obscenity in his eyes. He handed the wine glass to her. "Miss Wen, drink it. President Fu has spoken. Don't be disobedient." The feeling of humiliation lingered in Wen Nanxi's heart, and her throat seemed to be choked. Wen Nanxi's eyes were a little sour. She was afraid that she would cry and be embarrassed, so she raised her head and drank most of the glass of red wine, choking and coughing. But her childish performance pleased this group of people with bad intentions, and cheers rang out with mockery. "Miss Wen has a good alcohol tolerance." Boss Lin poured another glass of wine and put it in front of Wen Nanxi again amid the booing. She had a low alcohol tolerance and was a little allergic, so this glass of wine made her face red and her head dizzy. To outsiders, Wen Nanxi's face was flushed, and her eyes were moist and rosy, which made people want to ravage her. Boss Lin resisted the urge to touch her and rudely put the glass in front of Nanxi. Nanxi turned her head away while holding back her nausea. Boss Lin, I can't drink anymore. Why are you pretending? Just drink it when I tell you to. Boss Lin kept bringing the red wine glass closer to her, speaking high-sounding words. Nanxi looked at Fu Ciyan for help, but she only saw the impatience and coldness in his eyes, and she felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured on her. He was blaming himself. Nanxi was furious and took the glass of red wine. I'll drink it. The tears in the corners of her eyes were either from choking or drunkenness, and the pain in her heart made her feel suffocated. Fu Ciyan frowned and looked at Nanxi coldly, who was fed 2 glasses of wine, tilted his head, and got drunk. He pulled Nanxi into his arms. Boss Lin felt itchy and his body reacted. Boss Fu, let Nanxi accompany me for one night, and I'll give you another 20% profit on the project, how about that? Fu Ciyan's voice was like ice. Why, Boss Lin, you want to sleep with my wife? Have you had enough of living? These cold words made Boss Lin shiver on the spot, and he didn't say a word, and watched Fu Ciyan holding Nanxi and leaving the banquet. He almost forgot that the person in front of him was not someone to be trifled with. In Kyoto, Fu Ciyan's reputation was almost the same as the king of hell. But why did he put on such an indulgent attitude if he didn't let him play? On their way back, Nanxi felt hot all over. She pulled at her clothes unconsciously. The buttons on her collar were unbuttoned, revealing her white neck with a delicate maple leaf necklace hanging on it. Fu Ciyan looked at her delicate collarbone with a deeper look in his eyes. He simply hugged her into his arms and said with gritted teeth, "Is it so hard to give in to me?" Nanxi felt very uncomfortable. She couldn't hear what he said clearly. The alcohol stimulated her stomach and made her feel painful. Her body was hot and burning, as if she was burned by fire, burning her reason into nothingness. She couldn't open her eyes and felt dizzy. In a trance, she seemed to be picked up by someone, put on the bed, and fell into a soft ball. Fu Ciyan hugged her into his arms and stared at her blushing face. Perhaps she was drunk. Nanxi's eyes overflowed with a few tears. She sobbed and hugged his neck, saying something unknown, pouring a bucket of oil into the blazing fire. He felt more compassion in his heart, and his wildly surging emotions calmed down. He held Nanxi's face and kissed away the tears on her face, calling her baby again and again as if she were a treasure. Ian, Ian. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, and she whispered his name, but these 2 words made Fu Ciyan instantly cool down, and there was an unmelted ice in his eyes. The water was still boiling when Nanxi grabbed Fu Ciyan's hand, crying, "Please, don't leave me." Fu Ciyan was like being poured with a basin of cold water. His reason returned, and he left the bedroom without mercy. He lit a cigarette on the balcony, his eyebrows twisted into a character, and the cigarette but flickered at his fingertips. Nanxi was awakened by stomach pain. A burst of heart-piercing pain and a feeling of vomiting made her unable to care about anything. She ran to the bathroom with the last bit of strength and vomited violently while holding the toilet. She hadn't eaten anything in the first place, and now her internal organs were churning, and the feeling of suffocation made her feel very embarrassed. She barely raised her head, her eyes were bloodshot, her face was pale, and her neck was full of traces of madness. Tears flowed uncontrollably all over her face. Fu Ciyan was no longer in the bedroom. Nanxi covered her stomach and walked out of the bedroom weakly to call, "Ian. Fu Ciyan, are you there? Sister you." Nanxi's voice echoed in the empty villa, but no one responded. Another wave of pain came. She knelt on the ground in embarrassment, retched for a while, and called 120 with the last bit of rationality, and then completely fainted. When she woke up again, it was already late at night. Fu Ciyan saw her wake up, stood up and held her hand. "Baby, how did you get into this state? You have acute gastritis and ulcer bleeding. You fainted from the pain. Where is that bastard Fu Ciyan?" Nanxi took a break, her mind was still dizzy and she couldn't think straight. "I don't know where he went either. Yesterday she drank too much. If it weren't for the marks on her body, she would have thought she was having an erotic dream. She didn't even know when Fu Ciyan left." Fu Ciyan stuffed the phone into Nanxi's hand and said angrily, "Call him and see if I will scold him to death. I really gave him face." Nanxi smiled helplessly. She rarely got through to Fu Ciyan. Most of the time, His assistant answered the phone and he was always busy when she asked him. After a moment of silence, she opened Ji Jiaojia's circle of friends and a flash of understanding flashed in her eyes. Welcome party tilde the best brother in the world, thank you for picking me up in the middle of the night. Chapter 3 When Nanxi, you're over it. The accompanying picture is a photo. Judging from the background, it should be in a bar. Fu Ciyan's friends who grew up together are all there. He leaned on the sofa, with a bit of laziness in his eyes. The nobleness in his bones made him unforgettable in the crowd. Ji Jiaojia made a scissor hand gesture to the camera. From the angle of the photo, she seemed to be leaning on Fu Ciyan's shoulder. Her smile was pure and bright. Her cardigan was unbuttoned, revealing a large area of snow white on her chest. Damn. He is an idiot. His wife was hospitalized for gastric bleeding, and he was drinking with other women. Is this his white moonlight sister? Fu Ciyan was so angry that she stomped her feet and felt sorry for Wen Nanxi. I told you not to marry him earlier. Damn, I'm going to kill him. Wen Nanxi nodded, suppressing the bitterness in her heart. Not marrying. How could she have the right to choose? Her mother was kidnapped and died when she was young. Her father was indifferent to her. Her stepmother was afraid that she would compete with her brother for the family business, so she wanted to kick her out all day long. The year she graduated, the Wen family company encountered a crisis, and Fu Ciyan's reputation was in jeopardy because of his affair with Ji Jiaojiao. It was her father and stepmother who sent her to the Fu family in exchange for an investment. In short, she was sold. But she was willing at that time. After all, Fu Ciyan was handsome, gentle, and had a good family background. In addition to having someone in his heart, he was simply a perfect lover. The most important thing was that Fu Ciyan was kind to her, so she married him willingly. When Nanxi sniffed and pretended to be indifferent and said, "You can't beat him." Fu Ciyan. My good girlfriend, it hurts. When Nanxi still had a headache, as if she hadn't sobered up yet, and said weakly, I'm still a little nauseous, sleep for a while, you should rest too. Fu Ciyan sat on the accompanying chair. You sleep, I'll help you watch the needle. When Nanxi was really uncomfortable, and fell asleep as soon as she closed her eyes. Fu Ciyan didn't sleep all night, but when he returned to the villa, he didn't see Wen Nanxi's figure. He showed some impatience in his eyes. Mrs. Yu came over attentively, her face full of flattery. Mr. is back, I have prepared breakfast. Fu Ciyan said coldly, where is their wife? A trace of guilt flashed across Mrs. Yu's face. I don't know, their wife went out in the middle of the night yesterday, and I don't know who she went to see. She didn't tell me when I asked her. Fu Ciyan's face darkened, and he called Wen Nanxi. As soon as the call was connected, Fu Ciyan was scolded. Fuck, Fu Ciyan, do you have a heart? You called your wife after she was missing her all night. How could she not die in your lover's arms? Fu Ciyan frowned. He recognized that it was Fu Ciyan's voice and said coldly, let Wen Nanxi answer the phone. Fu Ciyan was furious when he heard his tone. Who are you arguing with? Did you know that your wife is in the hospital? She almost died at home. Hospitalized? Fu Ciyan's pupils contracted, and he hung up the phone and rushed to the hospital. Fu Ciyan spat at the phone, returned to the ward lightly, put the phone next to Wen Nanxi, checked the time, and went out to buy breakfast for Wen Nanxi. Wen Nanxi just opened her eyes and saw Fu Ciyan rushing over. She didn't sleep well after a night of drowsiness and kept dreaming. The death of her mother, the indifference of her stepmother, the cruelty of her stepbrother, and the redemption and tenderness that Fu Ciyan gave her. She couldn't tell the difference between dream and reality. She subconsciously opened her hands, with deep attachment in her eyes, and shouted, Ian. Fu Ciyan's hands on her side suddenly clenched, and the worry on his face turned into ridicule. Wen Nanxi, you've gone too far. This sentence made Wen Nanxi completely sober. She frowned and didn't say anything. Fu Ciyan was furious when he saw her refusing to communicate. Wen Nanxi, you are the wife of the Fu family now. We haven't divorced yet. You ran out in the middle of the night without saying a word. Do you want to cheat on me? Wen Nanxi's heart was stabbed with a knife again. The pain spread to her limbs, but she wanted to laugh because of his words. Fu Ciyan, who on earth ran out without saying a word? Who on earth wants to cheat on whom? I saw you hugging Ji Jiaojiao, and I thought she was Mrs. Fu. Fu Ciyan's face became even gloomier. What are you talking about? Jiao Jiao is my sister. When Nanxi lowered her eyes, looking calm, but actually biting her lips. One word, sister, can explain everything. He always protected Ji Jiao Jiao like this, and didn't allow anyone to say a word about her. But when Nanxi didn't understand, if she loved him so much, why did she steal his heart so affectionately in the first place? Why did it turn cold so quickly after the passion? They could have spent the past 3 years in peace. When Nanxi wanted to ask, but because of her self-esteem, she didn't say it out loud, and just sent the guest away coldly. Well, Mr. Fu, please go back, I won't disturb you and your sister. When Nanxi bit the 3 words, your sister, very hard, but she didn't want to continue arguing, she was very tired. Fu Ciyan was silent for a long time, but he turned around and left without saying a word. As soon as Fu Ciyan left, Xie Qian came into the ward with the breakfast she bought and asked suspiciously. Did Fu Ciyan, the scumbag, come to see you? When Nanxi hadn't completely digested the negative emotions, and forced a smile. Well, I scolded him away. Xie Qian pouted. You are the only one who scolds people, you'd better stop scolding. What if you scold him again and make him happy? When Nanxi was amused by her words and took the porridge she brought. You are still so good at talking. She was drinking the porridge when the doctor came to check on her. Coincidentally, it was the doctor who performed a gastroscopy on her the day before yesterday. Shen Yuchuan pushed the frame of his glasses, his face serious. Did I tell you that you should eat light food and not drink alcohol after gastroscopy? When Nanxi shrank her neck, this time it was an accident. As a doctor, Shen Yuchuan couldn't stand patients who didn't follow the doctor's advice and abused their bodies. His attitude was cold. Accident? This time it was ulcer bleeding, next time it will be gastric perforation. If it happens again, you don't need to call 120, just send it to the funeral home. Dr. Shen, please be gentle, don't scare my little Nanxi. He Yang walked in with a fruit basket and spoke loudly. He looked sloppy and a little bit ruffian. He raised his mouth slightly, but he was full of nobility, like a jerk and a nobleman. Shen Yuchuan rolled his eyes at him, turned around and left the ward, leaving a sentence. Just spoil her. The moment she saw He Yang, when Nanxi sniffed. Second Yang. He Yang sighed, you are disrespectful, call me cousin. He Yang is Wen Nanxi's cousin. Because he is the second child in the family, he is not serious on weekdays, like a playboy. His friends call him Second Yang. Shen Yuchuan is his college classmate, and they have a good relationship. When Nanxi has a good relationship with He Yang. After her mother passed away, it was her uncle's family who gave her the rare warmth. He Yang saw Wen Nanxi's pale face and knew that she had been wronged again. He gently placed his hand on Wen Nanxi's head and said softly. Shen Yuchuan was a little fierce. I'll kick his ass for you later. The bitterness in Wen Nanxi's heart was diluted, and she laughed. Don't, I still have to treat my illness. At this time, Fu Ciyan stood at the door, and he didn't know how long he had been watching. His fingers unconsciously exerted force, and the handle of the incubator was almost flattened by him. Chapter 4. You have occupied her for 3 years, it's time to give her back to me. Fu Ciyang's face was filled with gloom. He turned around and threw the chicken soup in his hand into the trash can, then walked out with big strides, his heart filled with a dark cloud. He had forgotten how long it had been since when Nanxi smiled at him, but how could she smile so gently at a man? Fu Ciyang went downstairs and found his driver Xiaoli waiting for him beside the car. When he saw the president coming, he grinned as usual and bent down to open the car door. Fu Ciyan felt upset and even looked at Xiaoli with annoyance. Why are you smiling at him? Xiaoli black question mark, huh? After the test results came out, when Nanxi was discharged from the hospital, said goodbye to her best friend and cousin, and turned around to call a car back to the company. The company has been very busy recently. She is the main force in the fashion design department. She has been scolded by the director for taking a morning off. If she continues to be absent from work, she will probably be beaten and skinned by Lisa. When Nanxi hurried into the fashion design department, but saw someone sitting at her workstation. When that person turned around, her pupils suddenly shrank. Ji Jiao Jiao. Although this was the first time he saw her, when Nanxi recognized her at first sight as Fu Ciyang's white moonlight. Why is she here? Lisa just came out of the office and saw Wen Nanxi, who was stunned. She said. What are you standing there for? Get to work. The client is asking us to help. Jiao Jiao, just sit next to Nanxi. She's very capable. Let her guide you. Ji Jiao Jiao raised a smiling face. Okay, Sister Lisa, Sister Nanxi, I just arrived and I'll sit here for a while. You won't mind, right? When Nanxi pursed her lips, feeling a little uncomfortable, she said something perfunctorily and sat down to organize today's work. Aurora Customization is the largest high-end customization brand under the Fu Group. When she graduated, she fought her way through a large number of job seekers and finally got into the design department. She and Fu Ciyan have always kept a low profile after their marriage, and her information has been well protected. Of course, Fu Ciyan has never given her any backdoor, and no one in the company knows that she is the president's wife. She still works like a social animal. As the leader of the industry, the pressure in the design department was terribly high. She used to get so angry that she often complained to Fu Ciyan about weird clients. The design department had extremely high requirements for employees' academic qualifications, strength and ability to withstand pressure. Now is not the recruitment season, and the school that Ji Jiao Jiao graduated from is not a very outstanding university. She does not meet the special recruitment standards, so it is easy to imagine how she got into the design department. Sister Nanxi, Brother Yang came to pick me up in the early morning yesterday. Are you unhappy? Ji Jiao Jiao came closer with a faint smile on her face and 2 dimples. Anyone who saw her would think she was innocent and harmless. When Nanxi heard the provocation in Ji Jiao Jiao's words, and she responded calmly. You are his sister, it is my duty to pick you up. Ji Jiao Jiao was stung by the word sister, a trace of resentment flashed in her eyes, and she lowered her voice. When Nanxi, is stolen love sweet? You have occupied him for 3 years, it's time to give him back to me. You should know that I am the one in his heart, and he should have married me. When Nanxi felt a pain in his heart. How could she not know? Everything about Ji Jiao Jiao was perfectly treasured by Fu Ciyan in their Fenglinuan villa. Fenglinuan villa was her and Fu Ciyan's wedding house. She had always regarded Fenglinuan as her own home, but it was only after 2 years that she found out that there was a room specifically used to store Ji Jiao Jiao's things. This had always been like a thorn stuck in her throat. It hurt, but there was nothing she could do about it. Along with the ceramic cup, the 2-year relationship between her and Fu Ciyan was also shattered. They went from being close lovers to being strangers living under the same roof. How could Ji Jiao Jiao not see the fragility on Wen Nanxi's face? She smiled more flamboyantly, moved closer to Wen Nanxi, and said word by word. I'll get him back, he's mine. Wen Nanxi felt like she couldn't breathe, so she picked up the documents on the table. You go and organize the customer information. But the document had just touched Ji Jiao Jiao when there was a bang and Ji Jiao Jiao fell off the chair. Her arm hit the water on the table and it spilled all over her. The thin shirt was soaked by the water and stuck to her body, making her look embarrassed and sexy. Jiao Jiao. When Nanxi looked up suddenly and saw Fu Ciyan walking towards her quickly. He glanced at the wet clothes on her chest and subconsciously avoided his gaze. He took off his suit jacket and put it on Ji Jiao Jiao. Ji Jiao Jiao seemed to be frightened and shrank into Fu Ciyan's arms. Brother Yang, don't blame Sister Nanxi. She didn't mean it. When Nanxi. This shit happened so suddenly and unexpectedly. When Nanxi rolled her eyes speechlessly. How old are you? You still play tricks like this? Do you think the company doesn't have surveillance? Ji Jiao Jiao bit her lip, her eyes reddened. I fell down because of my own carelessness. It has nothing to do with Sister Nanxi. Brother Yang, please let me go. As she said this, she was about to take off Fu Ciyan's coat. She was wearing thin clothes to begin with, and now one could clearly see the color and shape of her underwear. Fu Ciyan put his hands on her shoulders and looked at Wen Nanxi with deep eyes, seeming to reveal some dissatisfaction. Wen Nanxi felt very upset. Fu Ciyan couldn't even see such an obvious trick. There was a hint of resentment in her words unconsciously. It's good that you know it's your fault. Stop talking, Wen Nanxi, just do what you should do. Wen Nanxi's words were interrupted. She looked at Fu Ciyan, who was squatting beside Ji Jiao Jiao. His eyes were unfathomable, full of inquiry and suspicion. His aura made Wen Nanxi breathless. He doesn't trust himself. After 3 years of being together day and night, does he actually think that he is such a person? Wen Nanxi's fingertips curled up at her sides, her heart inevitably ached, her nose felt sore, and her nails dug deeply into her palms. Sure enough, he always unconditionally favors Ji Jiaojiao, no matter what the truth is. Lisa, who had just finished a meeting, saw this scene and was so scared that she screamed like a groundhog in her heart. She quickly came up to smooth things over. How can you be so careless? Jiaojiao's clothes are all wet. Go change your clothes quickly. Nanxi, come with me. The client has new requirements. Fu Ciyan glanced at Wen Nanxi, then protected Ji Jiaojiao and left. The moment he turned around, Wen Nanxi saw Ji Jiaojiao's provocative eyes. He felt so depressed and uncomfortable that he followed Lisa into the meeting room in silence. Lisa noticed that something was wrong with Wen Nanxi, so she poured her a glass of water and placed it in front of her. How did you get into a fight with Ji Jiaojiao? Do you know who she is? She's Mr. Fu's person. She was sent here personally today. You don't have a background, so you can't afford to offend her. Chapter 5. Do you want me to come back? Mr. Fu's people. When Nanxi felt a little dazed. I didn't push her, Sister Lisa. Lisa smiled and leaned back in her chair. Of course I believe you. Anyone can see her little tricks, but there is nothing I can do. She is Mr. Fu's fiancée. I will take care of her myself from now on. You stay away from her. How could someone who has been in the workplace for many years not see through this kind of trick? When Nanxi frowned slightly, fiancée. Lisa nodded. Yes, this is our future boss lady. We have to treat her with respect, otherwise we won't know how we will lose our job. I don't think she is a generous person. When Nanxi held the cup, the scorching heat passed through the wall of the cup and reached her hands, burning her palms so much that they hurt, but she seemed not to notice. You already have a fiancé before you get divorced. Then what is she, the legal wife? When Nanxi felt like she was completely cheated on and a little sick. She really wanted to ask Fu Ciyan if he still had any shame. Divorce is divorce, it's not that she doesn't accept it, but doing such a disgusting thing is really too much. I understand, Sister Lisa, I'll go back to work first. Ji Jiaojiao was protected by Fu Ciyan as she walked out. Her coat was still stained with Fu Ciyan's scent, which made her blush and her heart beat fast. When she was 18 years old, she publicly expressed her love, but Fu Ciyan rejected her at that time. She really thought that Fu Ciyan didn't like her. But unexpectedly, as soon as she went abroad, Fu Ciyan issued a statement saying that he loved her deeply. It has been like this for a long time. She said at the beginning that she would never go abroad. Otherwise, both of their children would be able to walk by now. She glanced at Fu Ciyan shyly, but found that he was keeping a distance from her. She couldn't help feeling a little dissatisfied. She cried out, pretended to stagger, and moved closer to Fu Ciyan. Be careful. Fu Ciyan held Ji Jiaojiao's shoulders but did not let her get close to his body. Ji Jiaojiao curled her lips and complained. I don't know how I offended Wen Nanxi. She targeted me like this. It hurt so much when I fell. Fu Ciyan's eyes became deep and his voice became much lower. Jiaojiao, don't play tricks. Ji Jiaojiao frowned slightly. I just don't like her, Brother Yang, please fire her. Fu Ciyan stopped and there was a hint of warning in his eyes. She is your sister-in-law, don't disrespect her. I have something else to do, you can change your clothes by yourself. Ji Jiaojiao stood there in a daze, feeling a chill on her back. Fu Ciyan cares so much about Wen Nanxi? Looking at Fu Ciyan's back, Ji Jiaojiao clenched her fists, with only hatred in her eyes. Fu Ciyan did not return to the president's office, but went to the Human Resources Department of Aurora Customization and approved a week's leave for Wen Nanxi. Thinking of Wen Nanxi's pale and bloodless face just now, he couldn't help but frown. You're not well yet, why are you going to work instead of taking a good rest? Wen Nanxi was still a little confused when he received the call from the Human Resources Department. Who gave her sick leave? It can't be Fu Ciyan. Lisa sorted out the documents and asked her to take them home. She could go home to rest, but she couldn't stop working. Looking at Wen Nanxi's pale lips, she sighed. Go home and hide away first. If Ji Jiaojiao still targets you, I will transfer you to the second department later. Wen Nanxi also figured out the relationship between them. She was an eyesore to Ji Jiaojiao, and Fu Ciyan was helping Ji Jiaojiao vent her anger. This time she was given a holiday, next time she will probably be fired. So what did she do wrong? It wasn't her who forced Fu Ciyan to get married in the first place, so it was really disgusting to see her being humiliated like this. Back at the Maple Garden Villa, when Nanxi looked at the design draft in front of him and felt his brain was so tired that it couldn't work anymore. He just sat there until the evening. The door opened and Fu Ciyan came off work. When Nanxi took his coat as usual, speaking in a gentle voice. "I'm back." The fingertips gripping the coat tightened slightly, and when Nanxi pursed her lips. The table was filled with hot dishes. She and Fu Ciyan sat at opposite ends of the table, as if separated by a Milky Way. Sister Yu brought the last dish to the table and wiped her hands. "Sir, today's fish is very fresh, please try it." When Nanxi ate the bowl of loofah meatball soup in front of her in silence, and picked out the coriander in the soup with a little disgust. Fu Ciyan noticed her little action, paused his chopsticks, and looked at Sister Yu. "Sister Yu, make some stomach-nourishing dishes next time. Don't make them so greasy. Also, don't put coriander in them." Yu's wife smiled flatteringly. "Sir, I remember that you like to eat coriander, and Miss Jiao Jiao likes it too." All the dishes on her table were prepared according to Fu Ciyan's taste. As for what Nanxi liked to eat, that was not important. "Miss Jiao Jiao has returned and this woman will be driven away soon," Fu Ciyan said with deep meaning in his eyes. "There is a mistress in this house." When Nanxi's hand shook, and the meatballs fell into the bowl, splashing the soup. She was a little bit unbelievable. Is Fu Ciyan speaking for her? When they got married, she knew that Fu Ciyan loved Ji Jiao Jiao, so she lied that she had someone she liked, just to make Fu Ciyan feel less pressured. Fu Ciyan signed a 3-year contract, which stipulated that they would divorce after 3 years and each pursue their own true love. She had no choice but to agree. He was venting his anger for Ji Jiao Jiao at the company today, so why was he speaking up for me in the evening? Mrs. Yu left in embarrassment. When Nanxi felt conflicted and didn't say anything. For a moment, the only sound in the air was the clatter of dishes and chopsticks. "Are you free for a moment? Let's chat. Talk about your fiancé." When Nanxi smiled and felt that she was greener than coriander. "What fiancé?" Fu Ciyan frowned, his eyes somewhat puzzled. When Nanxi didn't know what he was pretending to be, so he pointed it out directly. "Ji Jiao Jiao, you suspended me for her. Is she happy?" "I still want to thank you. You used the name of asking for leave to save my face." When Nanxi was rarely so aggressive, which made Fu Ciyan a little unhappy. "What are you thinking about? Jiao Jiao is my sister. When did you become so petty? Stingy?" When Nanxi's heart ached, and she forced a smile, "That's my fault. I haven't finished my work yet, so I'm leaving first." Fu Ciyan finally nodded and said nothing more. The coldness and silence settled in the air, making people feel breathless. At night, the two people who should have been the closest to each other were sleeping in the same bed but had different dreams. When Nanxi closed her eyes and listened to the breathing beside her gradually becoming steady before she turned over to look at his profile. His usually serious face softened in his sleep. Only his outline could be seen in the darkness. She couldn't help but reach out and touch the side of his face. There was a hint of attachment in Nanxi's eyes. This was the person she had kept deep in her heart for so long. Only she knew how reluctant she was to let him go. Finally she turned over, forced herself to close her eyes, and fell asleep. She didn't notice that her eyelashes trembled slightly, and Fu Ciyan's hand was on her back, gently soothing her. The next morning, when Nanxi woke up, she saw Fu Ciyan getting dressed. His slender fingers were fastening the buttons, and his abdominal muscles were faintly visible. His suit pants wrapped around his lower body, and his long legs were slender and straight, exuding a sense of abstinence. "You want it?" Noticing Nanxi's gaze, Fu Ciyan spoke in an ambiguous voice and lifted her chin with his fingers, his eyes naked. When Nanxi turned her head away, and a hint of red appeared on the tip of her ear. "It's my birthday today, will you come back in the evening?" They celebrate their birthdays together every year. When Nanxi had just woken up and her voice sounded soft, like a little rabbit. Fu Ciyan felt as if a feather had scratched his heart, making him feel itchy. He pressed the person down on the bed, and his warm breath fell on Nanxi's ears, somewhat tempting. "Do you want me to come back?" Chapter 6. Be good and wait for me to come back. Their hot breath evoked a tingling sensation. When Nanxi's heart skipped a beat and she unconsciously reached out and pressed her hand against his chest. The flames seemed to burn in an instant, and the smoky purple suspender nightgown was peeled off from her shoulders by Fu Ciyan, revealing her snow-white and smooth shoulders. The words that when Nanxi hadn't said yet were blocked in her mouth, and the affectionate and long kiss diluted her rationality. "Brother Yang, you said you would take me to work today. You haven't gotten up yet, have you, lazy bum?" When Nanxi's eyes opened in an instant, and the whole person fell into an icy cave. Okay, your lover has come to you, right?" And that hot body cooled down in an instant. Fu Ciyan stood up and buttoned his clothes. His eyes, which had just been filled with lust, became cold, as if nothing had just happened. "I'll be back in the evening." When Nanxi really admired the speed at which he changed his expression. Fu Ciyan is probably the inheritor of the intangible cultural heritage of Sichuan opera face changing. Being a CEO is quite versatile. But when Nanxi didn't want to be offended by this, and said sharply, "Interesting, you're trying to snatch someone from your bed. Fu Ciyan, are you really going to go with her?" Fu Ciyan was a little puzzled. He didn't understand where Nanxi's inexplicable malice towards Ji Jiaojiao came from. "Do you care about her that much? I've told you that Jiaojiao is my sister. I've told you that I'll be back to accompany you in the evening. What else do you want?" When Nanxi sneered, "Oh, then don't come back. Men are all good. I don't care." Fu Ciyan's face turned cold. He grabbed Nanxi's arm and kissed her as if punishing her. Her body was still hot and she was half naked, while Fu Ciyan was neatly dressed, with the muscles of his shoulders wrapped under his shirt, full of abstinence. The air was robbed and Nanxi could hardly breathe. A few crystal tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. Only then did Fu Ciyan let her go. "Be good, I'm going to work, wait for me to come back." When Nanxi was panting, and Hongwen, who was teased, curled herself up in the quilt in anger. Fu Ciyan straightened his trousers and looked at Nanxi, wishing he could eat him up on the spot. He didn't open the door until Ji Jiaojiao knocked on the door urgently. When Ji Jiaojiao saw Fu Ciyan coming out, she hugged his arm coquettishly and shook it gently. "Brother Yang, sister, you made my favorite soup dumplings. Come with me to eat." Fu Ciyan nodded slightly and pulled his arm out calmly. Ji Jiaojiao's eyes darkened, but she didn't force it anymore. Instead, she ran to the restaurant lively, praising with bright eyes. "Wow! Sister Yu, your cooking skills are getting better and better. I miss your cooking the most when I'm abroad." Unlike her dislike for Nanxi, Yu's wife was much closer to Ji Jiaojiao, with eyes full of love. "Miss Jiaojiao, you have been wronged for the past 3 years. From now on, I will cook whatever you want to eat. Come on, eat it. I didn't even put onions in it because I know you don't like it." In the old house, Yu Saw used to take care of Ji Jiaojiao and knew her preferences very well. Fu Ciyan looked at this scene, his brows slightly frowned. Ji Jiaojiao sat down next to Fu Ciyan, picking up food for him while acting coquettishly with Mrs. Yu. "She looks more like a hostess than Nanxi." Fu Ciyan finished his meal, put down his chopsticks and said, "Mrs. Yu, remember to prepare a cake tonight, and the cream shouldn't be too sweet." Ji Jiaojiao paused for a moment and pretended not to care. "Brother Yang, is it sister-in-law's birthday today? Well, eat well and go." Fu Ciyan responded, stood up and picked up his coat, without noticing the gleam in Ji Jiaojiao's eyes. When Nanxi took a nap and when he woke up it was already 9 o'clock. The food on the table was cold. Mrs. Yu was sitting next to him watching videos very loudly and had no intention of heating up the food. "Sister Yu, go make a bowl of clear noodle soup." When Nanxi poured a glass of warm water and swallowed the pill. She had a bad stomach, so she had to have her 3 meals on time. Although she knew that Mrs. Yu looked down on her, she couldn't let a nanny control her. Yu Saw was somewhat dissatisfied. "Just eat wherever there is food. Why are you so picky? You really think you are rich, lady?" When Nanxi curled the corner of his mouth. "As long as Fu Ciyan doesn't divorce me, I will still be Mrs. Fu. If you don't want to be her, I can find a nanny." Mrs. Yu stood up reluctantly, mumbling something inaudible. Of course it's not a good thing. After recovering a little, when Nanxi was full of inspiration today and devoted himself to his work. By the time he finished revising the design draft, it was almost dusk. No one knew where Mrs. Yu had gone and she didn't even cook dinner. She thought that Fu Ciyan would be back tonight, so she went out and bought a cake. It was already late autumn. There were large tracts of maple trees planted in the maple forest garden. At the moment, they were as red as fire and very beautiful. However, there were only a few lonely leaves left on the branches of the poplar trees nearby. The cold wind blew, and the scene was bleak and a little cold. When Nanxi couldn't help but shiver. It was getting dark early at this time. Seeing that Mrs. Yu had not returned yet and no one answered the phone, when Nanxi decided to do it himself. She was not very good at cooking and usually could only cook noodles or something. It took her 2 hours to prepare for dishes and a soup. The lighting in the restaurant is soft, and the strawberry bear on the cake is smiling innocently. It's almost 9 o'clock and Fu Ciyan hasn't come back yet. When Nanxi felt a little empty in her heart. She touched her lips and recalled the kiss in the morning. She couldn't describe the feeling and sat at the dining table in a daze. Fu Ciyan's phone was turned off. When Nanxi felt tired for no reason and simply fell asleep on the dining table. She woke up with a stomachache and took some medicine without thinking. At this time, the clock hands had already reached 11:30. The villa was empty and desolate, and the food had already gone cold. Fu Ciyan is a man who values his promises very much. I think the reason he stood up this time was because of something important. But when Nanxi still felt a little uncomfortable. When she was wondering whether to continue waiting, she saw Ji Jiaojiao's circle of friends. It's so hard to be sick, but I'm glad I have you. When Nanxi recognized at a glance that the hand that Ji Jiaojiao was holding in the picture was Fu Ciyan's hand. The maple leaf-shaped wedding ring is exquisite and handsome. It was designed by her herself. When Nanxi suddenly felt as if his heart was being gripped by a pair of huge hands, and the dull pain spread to every part of his body. She was stunned for a moment, turned off her phone, picked up her chopsticks and ate the cold dishes in big mouthfuls. Her eyes were sore and she couldn't taste anything. She just wanted to suppress the embarrassing feeling. The stomach, which had not yet recovered, began to ache again. When Nanxi covered her mouth and ran to the bathroom, vomiting violently. The physical pain seemed to suppress the psychological sadness a little. She smiled bitterly, looking at the face in the mirror that was so pale that it was almost transparent, feeling a little discouraged. If you don't want to come back, then don't come back. Why give her hope and then let her down? The cell phone rang, and Summer's voice came out. Happy birthday, baby. There's no signal in this damn place. I had to climb 2 mountains to get through to you. Fu Ciyan is an agent. Today she was rushing to a promotion with her artists. The filming location was in a mountain valley. There was no internet, not even a signal. She cursed for a whole day before she found a place with a signal and contacted Wen Nanxi. Hearing the familiar voice, Wen Nanxi's eyes began to heat up again, but she still responded as if nothing had happened. The moment Wen Nanxi opened her mouth, Fu Ciyan heard that something was wrong with her and asked anxiously. Wen Nanxi couldn't stand her questioning, so he told her what happened today, and Fu Ciyan was furious. Damn it! Fu Ciyan, that scumbag, actually cheated on you? Damn it, wait for me to go back and catch you in the act. You haven't even divorced yet, and he still dares to cheat on you? You can't control that stubborn thing, so cut it off as soon as possible. When Nanxi pulled the corner of her mouth and said, no need to rush back. Be safe and don't worry about me. We are going to get divorced anyway. It won't be long. Fu Ciyan suddenly fell silent and asked cautiously. Bao, are you willing to give it up? When Nanxi is an introvert and not sociable, and has only a few friends. Fu Ciyan understood how important Fu Ciyan was in Wen Nanxi's heart. When Nanxi rubbed her sore eyes and pretended to be relaxed. What should I do? He doesn't want me anymore. Chapter 7. My husband cheated on me and is now with his mistress. Fu Ciyan woke up from his chair, feeling a little dizzy. Ji Jiaojiao was lying on the bed with a slightly flushed face. Fu Ciyan touched her forehead with the back of his hand and found that the temperature had subsided. It's gone. Have a good rest. I'm going back now. Brother Yang. Ji Jiaojiao grabbed his hand and said pitifully. I'm scared, can you stay with me? Fu Ciyan looked at his watch and anxiety flashed in his eyes. It's already 12 o'clock. He missed Wen Nanxi's birthday. He put Ji Jiaojiao's hand into the quilt and told her. You should take a rest first. I will come to see you tomorrow. Ji Jiaojiao called out several times in a row, but failed to stop Fu Ciyan. She pounded the bed several times in anger and said through gritted teeth. Wen Nanxi. It's all your fault for stealing my brother Yang. She was showered with cold water for most of the day until she had a fever, and then she secretly put some sleeping pills in Fu Ciyan's water cup, and only then did she keep him. She now only regretted that she had not given enough medicine, otherwise it would have been a fait accompli today. What a pity. When Fu Ciyan rushed back to the bridal villa, it was almost 12:30. The villa was completely dark. Yusoa came out rubbing her eyes. "Sir, my wife is out and not at home." Fu Ciyan frowned. "When did it happen?" A gleam of light flashed in Yu's eyes, and she said, "He left home as soon as it got dark. A strange man came to pick him up. I have never seen him before." "Sir, do you want more cake?" Yu took out the strawberry bear cake from the refrigerator. "I don't know if it suits your taste." Fu Ciyan turned around and went upstairs, his voice cold. "Lost it." When Nanxi was so sleepy in the infusion room that she fell asleep. She was not awakened until the blood started to come out of the needle in her hand, and she was woken up by the girl who was receiving an infusion next to her. She had gastritis again, and she was very weak and wanted to sleep, but she still had 2 bottles of medicine to take. When the nurse changed the medicine, she reminded her. "Where are your family members? Why don't they come to accompany you? It's dangerous for you to fall asleep while getting an injection alone." She had severe stomach pain in the villa today, and had no choice but to call a taxi to go to the emergency room. The back of her hand still hurt a little, and the word family made her heart ache again. When Nanxi thanked the nurse and then took over the conversation. "My parents are gone, and I'm alone here. Don't worry, I won't sleep later. Sorry. Her mother died when she was 6 years old. Her mother was kidnapped to protect her and was seriously injured during the rescue. The ambulance was blocked by a series of traffic accidents on the road, delaying the treatment. She didn't even see her mother for the last time. As for my father, it makes no difference whether he is alive or dead." The nurse was stunned for a moment and apologized in a low voice. "I'm sorry, I'll help you watch it if I have time." When Nanxi shook her head and refused. She was not so sleepy at the moment. The girl who was also receiving an for drip saw the wedding ring on her hand and couldn't help but say, "You are married, right? Why don't you let your husband come and accompany you?" When Nanxi paused and lowered her eyes, "My husband cheated on me and is now with his mistress." The girl was also stunned. I silently said to myself, I deserve to die. It was already 3:30 in the morning, and she was feeling sleepy. The girl was worried that she would fall asleep again, so she chatted with Nanxi. "Sister, if you are not happy, just leave. There are so many men. Why would you want to stay with a cheating rotten cucumber? You are so beautiful, you are more than qualified to be a match for a male star." When Nanxi pulled the corner of his mouth, "You are right, if you are not happy, then leave." But she still wasn't reconciled. If you have never loved, you naturally won't have any nostalgia. Pulling away from the person you deeply love is like digging a piece of flesh out of your heart, and it is bound to bleed. When I left the hospital after getting the 4 drip, the sky was already turning pale. The weather was getting colder and a layer of frost had formed on the ground. When Nanxi was afraid that Shen Yuchuan would catch her and scold her again, so she quickly gathered her clothes and left. The design draft had been revised and put in her bag. She was too lazy to run back home, so she went to the company to give the draft to Lisa. She arrived early and had breakfast first. When she came back, people in the company had already started to go to work. "Hey, did you hear? Our president and the newcomer from design department, Ji Jiaojiao, slept yesterday. Is this true? I heard that Ji Jiaojiao is Mr. Fu's sister. A brother sleeping with his sister. Is that really true? What brother and sister? They are an engaged couple. I saw Mr. Fu holding Ji Jiaojiao and leaving before get-off work ended yesterday. They came to work together today, so they must have been living together for a long time." Listening to these discussions, when Nanxi clenched his hands suddenly inside his coat, and he didn't know what to feel in his heart. It's not easy to be cuckolded. The 3-year period hasn't come yet. Can't he wait a little longer? Does it have to be on her birthday? Lisa saw that she didn't look well and there was a bruise on the back of her hand. She was a little concerned. "Are you so seriously ill? Just take a rest for the next 2 days." When Nanxi smiled and said, "It's not a big problem. I can still do it." Lisa has always admired Nanxi, who is capable and hardworking. Just over 3 years after graduation, he became one of the main forces in the design department. It's just a pity, how could I offend the president's fiancée? Go back and have a rest. Take another elevator today so you don't run into Ji Jiao. When Nanxi nodded and left calmly through the side door. How ridiculous. As the legal wife, she has to hide from the mistress. She hailed a taxi and just as she got in the car, she received a call from Wen Mingde. Wen Mingde is her father who is just as good as dead. Nanxi, Ji Jiao is back. Be smart and don't let her take advantage of you. No matter what, you are not allowed to divorce me. When Nanxi's eyes were indifferent, what if he insists on divorcing me? Wen Mingde was obviously a little angry. If you can't even catch a man, I've raised you for nothing? The company is at a critical stage and is counting on the Fu family's investment. If you dare to let me down, I'll break your legs. When Nanxi was calm and even wanted to laugh, if you can do it, come on, let me learn how to capture a man's heart. When Nanxi, do you have any manners? Why are you talking to me like that? I'm your father. From the day you sold me to the Fu family, you are no longer my father. Ignoring Wen Mingde's anger, Wen Nanxi hung up the phone decisively. A father who sold his daughter for fame and fortune, she married him 3 years ago and saved a company that was on the verge of bankruptcy. This was already a way of repaying his kindness in giving birth to her. If she gets divorced, she wants to live for herself in the future. This was the first time the word divorce popped up in Wen Nanxi's mind. She suddenly wanted an answer. She knew how her mother developed bipolar disorder. The year her mother became pregnant with her, Wen Mingde had an affair. He kept it a secret in the early stages, but her mother only found out when she was 4 years old that her father had another family outside and that the illegitimate child was only half a year younger than her. My mother, such a gentle and elegant woman, was driven into a madman. What's even more ridiculous is that before the 7th day after her mother's death, the mistress entered the house and became her stepmother. When Nanxi didn't want to follow her mother's old path. When she opened her phone, Fu Ciyan was still at the top of her list, but the messages between the two of them were still from half a month ago. With her fingers curled slightly, she sent out a message. 3 years are coming, let us talk. Chapter 8, Catching an Adulterer. When Nanxi waited for a whole day but received no reply from Fu Ciyan. The chat box was dead silent. The next evening, when Nanxi called Fu Ciyan. No matter what, she wants an answer. She can't let herself be cuckolded forever. The call was connected quickly, and Ji Jiao's voice was heard. Hello? Sister Nanxi, Brother Yang is taking a shower. Do you have anything to do with him? Bath? When Nanxi suddenly felt a little breathless. Then tell him to be careful and not drown. Hearing the busy tone on the other end of the phone, Ji Jiao smiled triumphantly and deleted the call record. A quarter of an hour later, Fu Ciyan came out of the meeting and frowned when he saw Ji Jiao. Have you seen my phone? Fu Ciyan did not go home for the next few days. If Wen Nanxi had not often seen reports about Fu Ciyan in the financial news, she would have thought she was a widower. When Nanxi suddenly lost interest and was fed up with such cold violence. She didn't want to go out, so she stayed at home to take care of her health. Apart from drawing drafts, she just slept. 3 days later, Fu Ciyan finally pulled her out of the villa. Fu Ciyan felt a little disappointed and pointed at Wen Nanxi's lifeless forehead. Tell me about yourself, what have you become of yourself because of a man? He's a scumbag, just throw him away, why torture yourself? Suddenly seeing Wen Nanxi in the summer, I felt a little dazed. Only 3 days had passed, but it felt like 3 years. I'm cosplaying as a woman in seclusion, does it look like one? Summer. What do you mean by like? You are like that. I finally managed to escape from the ravine. Let's go and have fun with you. In the summer, I drive my Mercedes-Benz all the way to the most lively bar in Kyoto. Young people were twisting their bodies on the dance floor, and the colorful lights were dazzling. When Nanxi's heart was beating fast because of the noise. She didn't like such a noisy atmosphere very much. Why did you bring me to the bar? I can't drink, and you want to send me to the hospital again. Summer flips her long hair and smiles charmingly. You can still have fun even if you don't drink. The guys here are all innocent and have 8-pack abs that you can touch at will tilde. When Nanxi. That's not necessary. How many men can compare to Fu Ciyan's body? If Fu Ciyan were sent to be a gigolo, he would definitely become the white moonlight in the hearts of all the rich women in Kyoto. Fu Ciyan ordered a glass of juice and some food for Nanxi. He held the glass in one hand and scanned the crowd in the bar. Nanxi thought she was looking for a handsome guy and just ate the fruit plate in front of her. Suddenly Fu Ciyan grabbed Nanxi's hand and stared at a certain position fiercely. Finally I caught you. Come on, I'll help you catch the adulterer. Nanxi was confused. Huh? I heard that jerk Jiang Hanan booked a room here, and sure enough, they are here. Following Fu Ciyan's gaze, Nanxi just happened to see Fu Ciyan's back. He went up to the second floor box. Fu Ciyan calculated the time and waited for a while, then pulled Nanxi upstairs and kicked open the door of the box with a bang. Caught an adulterer. Fu Ciyan, you have a wife but you still have a mistress. Do you have any shame? Nanxi. Fu Ciyan had a loud voice and was full of vigor. Her voice directly drowned out the sounds of drinking and having fun in the box. All pairs of eyes looked towards the door. What's that barking? The person who spoke was Jiang Hanan, Fu Ciyan's childhood friend and Ji Jiaojiao's most loyal supporter, who had often mocked Nanxi in the past. Nanxi walked out from behind Fu Ciyan silently. Fu Ciyan, is it interesting not to reply to messages? Nanxi's gaze passed over Jiang Hanan and looked at Fu Ciyan, who was sitting in the middle of the box. His expression was a little unfathomable. Sitting next to him was Ji Jiaojiao, who was wearing a short skirt with her belly button exposed. The two of them were very close to each other. Nanxi shuddered when he saw it. Winter is almost here. Aren't you cold wearing so little? Jiang Hanan was stunned and subconsciously looked back at Fu Ciyan. Although he usually looks down on Nanxi, after all, Nanxi is Fu Ciyan's legal wife. Fu Ciyan didn't react at all, so he could only say indifferently. What are you doing here? I didn't call you. Nanxi looked at Fu Ciyan and said something impolite. Oh, I'm here to look for my husband. Fu Ciyan had two buttons of his shirt unbuttoned, looking lazy and relaxed. When he heard these words, his eyes fell on Nanxi. Although Nanxi was from Kyoto, she looked like her mother, a typical Jiangnan beauty with an oval face, willow-shaped eyebrows, and a pair of affectionate eyes. She was dressed very comfortably today, with a V-neck shirt, a maple leaf necklace hanging around her snow-white neck, jeans that outlined her perfect waist and hip line, and a windbreaker draped over her. She looked good no matter how you looked at her. Did you miss me? Fu Ciyan rolled his eyes. I miss your 8 generations of ancestors. Nanxi pulled Fu Ciyan, smiled, and glanced at Ji Jiaojiao. Yeah, is this a new taste recently? Do you want me to help you get her? The originally noisy VIP box was now so quiet that you could hear a pin drop, and everyone was watching this war without the smoke of gunpowder. The affair between Ji Jiaojiao and Fu Ciyan caused a sensation in the city at the time, and everyone present knew about it. This time when Ji Jiaojiao came back and went in and out with Fu Ciyan, everyone knew that they would definitely be together in the future. As a result, Nanxi's position became very awkward. Ji Jiaojiao is the white moonlight that Fu Ciyan loves but cannot have. He was forced to marry Nanxi due to the situation. And Fu Ciyan really dotes on Ji Jiaojiao. Fu Ciyan's eyes darkened. Nanxi, speak properly. Nanxi lowered her eyes, feeling very bored. Who is not speaking properly? The atmosphere gradually became weird. Ji Jiaojiao stood up, with 2 dimples on her lips. Sister Nanxi, it's all my fault. I thought you were not feeling well so I didn't call you. Don't blame Brother Yang. Now that you are here, let's sit down and play together. Nanxi had no intention of staying, but after Ji Jiaojiao invited her, it would seem wrong for her to leave. As if he was scared. Okay, husband, I won't disturb you. There is a sting in these words. Fu Ciyan was somewhat dissatisfied with Nanxi's way of speaking and loosened his collar. What if I disturb you? Nanxi's attitude turned cold, and she looked him in the eyes and said. Let's talk. Fu Ciyan said coldly, I don't want to talk. Ji Jiaojiao clearly felt that the air pressure around Fu Ciyan had dropped. She hid the smile on her face and said coquettishly. Brother Yang, don't be so fierce. Sister Nanxi is a girl, please be gentle. Jiang Hanan sneered, some people just don't have a clear idea of themselves, they deserve to be disliked. Fu Ciyan watched the scene indifferently without saying a word. Nanxi's situation became more and more awkward. He even regretted barging in so rashly and becoming a laughingstock. Ji Jiaojia watched this scene, holding a glass of wine, and walked to Wen Nanxi, her eyebrows curved. Sister Nanxi, shall we have a drink? Chapter 9. Don't tell me you can't have children. Fu Ciyan could see that Ji Jiaojia was looking for trouble, so he said bluntly. What? You're toasting to your sister before you even enter the house? This concubine is quite self-conscious. Ji Jiaojia's expression changed instantly, and she looked embarrassed. You? How can you say that to me? Brother Yang and I are innocent. He is like my biological brother. Fu Ciyan glanced up and down at Ji Jiaojia. My dear brother? My beloved brother, right? Everyone knows that you shamelessly seduced your own brother. Now that he's married, you still shamelessly come up to him. You're called a mistress, don't you know? You're destroying other people's family relationships. That's enough. Fu Ciyan's cold voice came over. When Nanxi grabbed Fu Ciyan and said, I'm sorry, she was drunk and talking nonsense. Don't take it to heart. I apologize to you. When Nanxi knew how much Fu Ciyan protected Ji Jiaojia, even his legal wife had to stay away from him. If Fu Ciyan was offended, something bad could easily happen. Fu Ciyan was just like herself, an unloved little cabbage. Although her family seemed powerful, she was actually just an object used for marriage to consolidate the family's interests. If there was a conflict with the Fu family, she would definitely be the first to be abandoned. But Ji Jiaojia obviously didn't want to let them go. Her eyes instantly turned red and tears welled up. She looked at Fu Ciyan with a face full of humiliation. Brother Yang, it's all my fault. I know my sister-in-law hates me, but I won't accept insults. I will never bother you again. Whether I live or die has nothing to do with you. After saying that, he covered his face and ran out, leaving a string of crystal tears in the air. Fu Ciyan stood up immediately, his voice cold and serious. Wen Nanxi, you've gone too far. Wen Nanxi. Okay, it's all her fault. She glared at Fu Ciyan unhappily. Tell me, why did you provoke her? Fu Ciyan snorted, I just can't stand her green tea style. If I throw her into the Yellow River, people all over the country can drink Longjing tea. The tea taste is too strong. Jiang Hanan sneered, is it possible that you have forgotten how you married into the Fu family? It was you who stole Jiaojia's love. How can you be so embarrassed now? When Nanxi peeled the melon seeds in her hand, I forgot, how about you help me remember it? Jiang Hanan was so angry that he slapped the table. If it weren't for you, Jiaojia would never have gone abroad. Now it's Jiaojia who's marrying brother Fu. What does it have to do with you? You farted. Fu Ciyan couldn't bear to see her bestie being wronged, so she stepped on the low table, rolled up her sleeves and yelled. What does it have to do with Nanxi? If it weren't for your little green tea confession that ruined Fu Ciyan's reputation, would Ji Jiaojia have been kicked out of the country? Don't be too ridiculous. Nanxi didn't know Fu Ciyan when Ji Jiaojia went abroad. You make it sound like Nanxi was a third party who interfered. Jiang Hanan's breathing was stagnant because of the blockage. That was indeed what happened. Ji Jiaojia's confession caused such a big stir that the words, Ji Jiaojia loves Fu Ciyan, were scrolling on the electronic screens of all the shopping malls in Kyoto. This also caused the Fu family to be laughed at by people all over Kyoto. The topic was searched again and again, and Fu Ciyan's father lost a lot of hair. To be honest, the matter between Ji Jiaojia and Fu Ciyan has nothing to do with Wen Nanxi. She is innocent and can even be said to be a victim. But Jiang Hanan only helps his relatives and not the people. After all, Ji Jiaojia has called him Brother Hanan for so many years. The people that Jiaojia hates are the people he hates. He flipped a table in anger. Who do you think you are? Is it your turn to speak? It was Wen Nanxi who hurt Jiaojia. Now Jiaojia has returned to China. You'd better divorce Brother Fu as soon as possible and don't bring shame upon yourself. In fact, Wen Nanxi rarely had conflicts with Fu Ciyan's friends. When they had a good relationship before, he got along quite well with this group of people. But she couldn't stand Jiang Hanan targeting Fu Ciyan. She clapped her hands gently and looked at Jiang Hanan meaningfully. You keep speaking in Ji Jiaojia's favor. You might like her, right? Let's go, baby. Fu Ciyan won't be back. The last sentence is directed to Summer. Jiang Hanan was confused. Don't leave, explain it to me clearly. When Nanxi glanced at him indifferently, said nothing, and left the box. Fu Ciyan passed by Jiang Hanan and taunted softly. Oh my, why are you so anxious? You don't really like that little green tea girl, do you? Do you have any tricks up your sleeve to outsmart her? Jiang Hanan's face turned red, but he didn't dare to do anything. He kicked over a table in anger and watched the two men leave. The chilly wind blew away the heat from the bar, and Fu Ciyan was a little confused. How do you know they won't come back? When Nanxi said lightly. Everyone knows that I'm here to take Fu Ciyan home. If Fu Ciyan ends up leaving with Ji Jiaojiao, it would be like stepping on my face. Ji Jiaojiao will not let go of such a good opportunity. Although he had only met Ji Jiaojiao a few times, when Nanxi knew her quite well. Besides, Fu Ciyan dotes on Ji Jiaojiao so much, so of course he would comfort his little lover if she was wronged. Maybe this is the intuition of a love rival. Fu Ciyan said angrily, damn, these scumbags and bitches, I hope they don't have buttholes when they give birth to their children. When Nanxi straightened her windbreaker. Technology is quite advanced now, and we can create artificial anuses. Why not wish them infertility and a large family with many children and grandchildren? Fu Ciyan gave a thumbs up and said, you are really ruthless. Sure enough, Fu Ciyan did not come back that night. Although it was expected, when Nanxi still couldn't avoid feeling disappointed. She couldn't believe how the once handsome and elegant boy had become like this. She could accept not being loved anymore, but she really couldn't accept betrayal. The next day, when Nanxi received a call from her mother-in-law Yi Xiaohua, asking her to go back to the old house. She sighed, rubbed her aching temple, packed up her things, and rushed to the old house. In fact, she was reluctant to go back. Although Yi Xiaohua treated her well on the surface, the contempt in his eyes made her feel uncomfortable. So she seldom went to the old house. After all, she was just a daughter-in-law bought by the Fu family. She was not presentable, so it was normal for the Fu family to look down on her. If the Ji Jiaojiao incident had not happened, Fu Ciyan would have been able to marry a very good noble lady. The Fu family is wealthy and powerful, and the old house is in the Chinese garden style, covering a large area. Although they have been married for 3 years, they seldom come back home. Moreover, when Nanxi is not good at finding her way, and she can easily get lost if she is not careful, so she has to follow the servants. Yi Xiaohua was already in the living room, leaning on the chaise longue to read a book. When Nanxi knelt down obediently opposite Yi Xiaohua, with her knees together and her hands on her knees. Mom, do you have something to ask me? Yi Xiaohua took a sip of the water on the tea table, frowned slightly, and looked dissatisfied. I heard that you've been out all day recently. And you don't even go home at night. When Nanxi was stunned, no, I seldom go out. I have been working on my manuscript at home recently. Yi Xiaohua put the cup on the coffee table and made a sound. You still want to hide it from me? Sister Yu has told me many times that you are no longer the daughter of the Wen family, but the daughter-in-law of my Fu family. Why don't you put away your petty attitude? Where are the rules I taught you? As soon as when Nanxi heard it, she knew it was Mrs. Yu gossiping. After careful recollection, she thought she was probably talking about the 2 days when she was sick and went to the hospital. There were 2 days when I was sick and had 4 drips in the hospital at night. I still have the medical records here. Yi Xiaohua didn't want to listen to her explanation and interrupted her. I don't want to say anything else about you. It's been 3 years, why is there still no movement in your belly? Don't tell me you can't have a baby. Chapter 10 Is the Fu family going to be extinct? To say it wasn't embarrassing would be a lie. 3 years ago, her value was to help the Fu family clear their reputation. 3 years later, her only value was her uterus. When Nanxi knew that Yi Xiaohua was anxious, she was worried that Ji Jiaojiao would return home and rekindle her old relationship with her eldest son. That's why he wanted to have a child to restrain Ji Jiaojiao and completely eliminate her idea of replacing him. When Nanxi took a deep breath. Mom, about the child. Yi Xiaohua interrupted when Nanxi rudely again. I heard that Ciyan hasn't been home lately. How can you be a wife? You can't even hold a man's heart. Don't forget why Ciyan married you in the first place. I don't care what method you use. I want to hear the news that you are pregnant within a month. When Nanxi. It's all her fault, right? When Nanxi was also filled with anger. She was already very irritable because her period was coming. She did not follow Yi Xiaohua and said in a cold voice. Mom, I won't hide it from you. I had a physical examination some time ago, and the doctor said there was nothing wrong with me. You'd better ask Fu Ciyan about the fact that we can't get pregnant. What did you say? Father-in-law Fu Jingyao's shocked voice came from behind, and when Nanxi turned around subconsciously, Fu Jingyao's face was filled with shock. Fu Ciyan was standing next to him, his eyes were deep and his hands gripping his suit jacket were noticeably tightened. When Nanxi's face suddenly turned red. The rumor has been spread in front of the real person. In front of someone's parents. She dug her toes into the ground in embarrassment, said, "I'm going to the bathroom," and ran away. Fu Jingyao hadn't recovered from the shock yet, and looked at Fu Ciyan. "Have you been to the hospital? Is it serious?" Yi Xiaohua found it even harder to accept. She had just forced her daughter-in-law to give birth to a child, but her daughter-in-law turned around and told her that her son couldn't do it. Her eldest son was strong and healthy at a good age, so how could he become ill? Is the Fu family going to be extinct? Ciyan, medical care is very advanced now. Mom knows a few experts. I'll make an appointment for you so you can go see a doctor. Fu Ciyan licked his back teeth. He never thought that he would be slandered in his life. She was my wife, the one I had slept with for 3 years. When Nanxi stayed in the bathroom for a long time before she could break free from the awkward atmosphere. Of course Fu Ciyan is not incapable, he is actually very capable. But the two of them were in a contractual marriage after all, and it would be difficult to divide the child when they divorced, so Fu Ciyan always took measures. It also won't affect his pursuit of true love in the future. However, Fu Ciyan's parents didn't know about the contract marriage, and they were still thinking about having a grandson. The cold water hit his face and when Nanxi sobered up a little. When Nanxi opened the bathroom door, he froze. Fu Ciyan leaned against the wall, with his hair falling naturally on his forehead, making him look a little lazy. "Mrs. Fu, you said I can't do it." When Nanxi pursed her lips and said nothing, Fu Ciyan came over and lifted her chin. "Or are you blaming me for not feeding you enough these days?" The warm breath blew on her face, and when Nanxi blushed uncontrollably. Except in bed, they hadn't been this intimate for a long time. When Nanxi turned away unnaturally. "That was your problem?" Fu Ciyan was almost so angry that he laughed. He grabbed her hand and pressed it against the wall. He approached her and bit her lip as punishment. "My question. When Nanxi, are you sure?" When Nanxi stiffened his neck and refused to give in. "I just had a physical examination some time ago, and the doctor said there was nothing wrong with me. So it must be your fault that I can't get pregnant. Your mother forced me to have a child, and I have to give her an explanation." Fu Ciyan felt his teeth itching, and without thinking, he grabbed those lips and crushed her outrageous words into pieces. The familiar fragrance made him almost want to rub when Nanxi into his heart. Although they had not seen each other for only a few days, Fu Ciyan missed her very much. When Nanxi was stunned for a moment. How could she not miss such a kiss? Affectionate and tender, it tempts people to give their souls to it. But what happened between him and Ji Jiaojiao came to Wen Nanxi's mind. Did he kiss Ji Jiaojiao like this before? Hiss. Fu Ciyan took a step back and touched his lips. The bright red blood stuck to his fingers. He gritted his teeth. "Are you born in the year of the dog?" When Nanxi's eyes turned red, but her voice was cold. "Don't go too far. Does Ji Jiaojiao know you're like this?" Fu Ciyan frowned. "Why did you mention her?" When Nanxi forced an ugly smile. Why didn't she realize that Fu Ciyan was such a scumbag before? He had obviously rekindled his old relationship with Ji Jiaojiao, but he still came to provoke her. "Fu Ciyan, there are 43 days left until 3 years." When Fu Ciyan heard this, his expression suddenly turned sarcastic, and there was no warmth in the corners of his mouth. "Remember it so clearly. Are you so eager to leave me?" When Nanxi didn't understand what he meant. He loves Ji Jiaojiao so much, how could he bear to leave her nameless and without status? "Yes, I wish I could get a divorce right away." She said this lightly, but her heart was actually aching. Fu Ciyan laughed sarcastically. "When Nanxi, you are fine, go away." When Nanxi's fingertips trembled slightly, and she nodded as if nothing had happened, then walked towards the living room. "Although it seems like nothing matters, in fact, my heart feels like there is a big hole in it, bloody and cannot be filled." We had lunch at the old house, and when Nanxi had a hard time eating. Suddenly there was a piece of pork ribs in the bowl. She looked up and found that it was Yi Xiaohua who picked it for her. Yi Xiaohua smiled gently. Nanxi, you are too thin, eat more. When Nanxi. From the day she entered the family, Yi Xiaohua never liked her, finding fault with her openly and covertly, and was dissatisfied with her as a daughter-in-law. What's going on today? Asparag's poisonous. Mom, did I do something wrong? Yi Xiaohua smiled more gently. How could that be? Just pick up whatever you like to eat. Fu Jingyao coughed and said pointedly. Medical care is quite advanced nowadays. Don't worry too much. Children will be there in the future. When Nanxi subconsciously looked at Fu Ciyan, he lowered his eyes and ate the food in the bowl. When he noticed Nanxi's gaze, he snorted slightly. She suddenly felt touched. Fu Ciyan actually took the blame for not having children on her. Maybe Yi Xiaohua was afraid that he would divorce Fu Ciyan because he disliked her, so he treated him better than usual. On their way back, when Nanxi spoke softly. What I said today. She had only said half of her words when Fu Ciyan's phone rang. Wait for me, I'll be right there. After hanging up the phone, Fu Ciyan looked at Nanxi with his dark eyes. Get off. Is this to drive her away? When Nanxi spoke subconsciously. Are you okay? Fu Ciyan's eyebrows were stern, and his eyes lightly swept across Nanxi's face. You're eager to get a divorce right away, why are you still concerned about me? Chapter 11 Lost. Fu Ciyan's voice was harsh and cold, like a bucket of cold water poured over one's head in the dead of winter. All the words Nanxi originally wanted to say were frozen into ice and shattered to the ground. She wanted to apologize and say thank you. After all, what she said in the old house concerned Fu Ciyan's dignity as a man. She was still somewhat touched that Fu Ciyan came to her rescue. Now that I think about it, maybe he was just laying the groundwork for marrying Ji Jiaojiao in the future. If he was in good health, Yi Xiaohua and Fu Jingyao would never agree to him being with Ji Jiaojiao, and their divorce would not be so smooth. As for Fu Ciyan's whereabouts, they were going to get divorced soon, so she really had no right to ask. When Nanxi pursed her lips and got out of the car woodenly, the cold wind blew into his clothes, and when Nanxi realized belatedly that the voice on the phone just now sounded very much like Ji Jiaojiao, she pulled her coat closer to her body, and her originally warm hands had become cold. When Nanxi has always been afraid of the cold, and every winter she would wrap herself up into a ball. I checked my phone and saw that this area was full of private residential areas for wealthy people and it was impossible to get a taxi. If we walk along the main road, it will probably take another half an hour. The map showed a small path, and when Nanxi didn't care about anything else and turned around and walked into the winding path. Fu Ciyan looked out the window with deep eyes. The air pressure in the car was extremely low. Xiaoli shivered and spoke weakly. Mr. Fu, Uncle Liu didn't pick up his wife yet. Maybe he left first. Fu Ciyan didn't say anything. The temperature in the car seemed to drop a little. Xiaoli shrank his neck and drove carefully. When the president and his wife have a quarrel, those who are in charge have to be very careful for fear that others will be affected. Back at the company, Ji Jiaojiao was sitting in Fu Ciyan's office chair with a pouty mouth. Special Assistant Yu Zhao was standing nearby. When he saw Fu Ciyan coming, he bowed and called out, Mr. Fu. Ji Jiaojiao's eyes lit up, she jumped up from her chair and rushed to Fu Ciyan. Brother Yang, you're finally back. Where have you been? I've been waiting for you all morning. Fu Ciyan dodged backwards without leaving a trace. Back to the old house, what's up? Ji Jiaojiao snorted. Humph, you didn't even take me with you back to the old house. I'm angry. Fu Ciyan frowned slightly. Why are you here if you don't work properly? You were the one who asked to go to Aurora for customization. How can you leave your post without permission? Ji Jiaojiao didn't expect Fu Ciyan to lecture her, and she felt a little dissatisfied. I came to you for support. I've done a lot of work these past few days, but Lisa went too far. She bullied me because I'm new here and didn't even give me credit for the design. Fu Ciyan was annoyed by what he heard, and turned to Zhao and said, Take her and deal with it. I have something else to do. Sensing Fu Ciyan's impatience, Ji Jiaojiao became much more obedient. Then I won't bother you anymore. Please take care of yourself, Tilda. After returning to Aurora customization, Yu Zhao accompanied Ji Jiaojiao to Lisa's office. Sister Lisa, Mr. Fu said that he wants you to add my name to this project. Lisa was silent for a while and looked at Yu Zhao, who nodded. She had no choice but to agree. After finishing the work, Yu Zhao left the office. Ji Jiaojia put away her obedient appearance, became complacent, and directly crossed out when Nanxi's name. Sister Lisa, when Nanxi took a week off and didn't do any work. President Fu said her name should be deleted. Lisa frowned. That's not good. Although Nanxi has taken leave, the design drawings were all drawn by her. Nanxi is the main designer of this project. Now all the content has been completed and the client is very satisfied. It would be too much to delete it. Ji Jiaojiao just felt that Lisa was tactless and used Fu Ciyan to pressure others. This is what Mr. Fu said. Why don't you go talk to Mr. Fu? Lisa was at a loss as to what to do but felt it was unfair. But this kind of unfairness can be seen everywhere in the workplace. She is just a small director and has no way to go against the president. Looking at Ji Jiaojiao's arrogant look, Lisa felt very upset. When Nanxi was walking along the path, it was not easy for her to walk in her high heels. There was a thin layer of sweat on her forehead, her calves were sore, and most importantly, her lower abdomen was aching slightly. The worst thing is that she was lost. This is clearly marked on the map. Why is there no road? When Nanxi sat on the ground somewhat dejectedly. When he was unlucky, even drinking cold water would get stuck in his teeth. Fu Ciyan went on a business trip again, and she had no choice but to ask He Yang for help. It was nearly 2 o'clock when He Yang found her. He saw her staring blankly at the withered yellow leaves, with a barely perceptible frown between her brows. You were on an autumn outing, and you got lost. You're an adult. When Nanxi. It's not her fault that she has poor direction. Come on, silly girl, I'll take you home. He Yang was still in that nonchalant look. When Nanxi punched him angrily and turned to get in the car, He Yang shook his head behind her. It was naturally impossible for Wen Nanxi to come to the old house on his own initiative. Even if he came, the old house would have a car to pick him up. Then why she got lost here alone? The reason is obvious. Please take me to the company. Lisa wants to talk to me about something. He Yang sighed. You're not well yet, why are you running around instead of taking a good rest? Is Fu Ciyan Ju Baopi? When Nanxi mentioned Fu Ciyan again, his heart still ached. It's none of his business. I'm just going to meet a client and then go home to rest. It won't be a problem. Seeing that she was speaking for that jerk again, He Yang sighed imperceptibly. It's really hard to have a sister who is in love. The two chatted casually and soon arrived downstairs of the company. He Yang followed Wen Nanxi out of the car and straightened her collar. There's no need to work so hard. You won't starve to death as long as your brother is here. If things really don't work out, we can go back and rely on our parents. The old man at home is quite rich. When Nanxi burst out laughing, and a warm feeling rose in his heart. How dare you say that about your uncle? Go back quickly. After saying goodbye to He Yang, when Nanxi walked towards the company, there was a Maybach parked under a tree not far away, and the person in the car had a face so gloomy that it looked like water was about to drip out of it. After returning to the company, when Nanxi suddenly felt that the atmosphere in the company was weird. The way these colleagues looked at her was actually a bit pitiful. She sat at her workstation and looked at her colleague Xu Yang. What did the customer say? Are they satisfied? Xu Yang looked a little embarrassed, and said hesitantly. Well, I'm quite satisfied. The final payment has been settled and the project is completed. When Nanxi finally heard good news. She had been following this client for a long time and had asked for repeated changes. Most of her hair had fallen out, and she was still drawing styles for the client while she was sick. Finally, there was a good result. Seeing her sigh of relief, Xu Yang couldn't help but say. Sister Nanxi, do you want to ask Sister Lisa? You are not included in the project signature this time. When Nanxi frowned. Not me. You must have seen it wrong. I am the main designer this time. How could I be missing? Chapter 12. When Nanxi, apologize. Sister Nanxi, you took such a long leave and didn't participate in the final part of the project. It's normal that your signature is not included. Ji Jiaojiao's voice came from behind. She was wearing a suit and short skirt, holding a cup of coffee in her hand, looking like an exquisite urban beauty. Lisa was standing next to her, looking at Wen Nanxi with some pity in her eyes. Wen Nanxi frowned. I have been following this project for a month and a half, and it has been revised more than a dozen times. I only took a week of sick leave, so how come I was not involved? She has been working for so long and she has never seen anyone so eager to win the results. Ji Jiaojiao laughed. Sister Nanxi, when you followed up with the client before, the client was not satisfied at all. But when you just asked for leave, the client was satisfied. Doesn't this prove something? When Nanxi couldn't figure out what she meant, but a fire was rising in her heart, and she said in a rude voice, "What does that prove? Even if I asked for leave, I never stopped working. I was the one who submitted the final version. I drew it at home while I was sick." Seeing that the two were about to quarrel, Lisa quickly tried to smooth things over. All right, it's just a byline, there's no need to argue so much, Nanxi, stop talking." When Nanxi's face suddenly darkened. "Sister Lisa, you can't say that. I am the chief designer and I did most of the work. Why don't the jewelry I designed have my signature?" Ji Jiaojiao's voice also became much colder. "When Nanxi, don't take yourself too seriously, do you think Aurora can't turn without you? Everyone here has contributed, but you are saying that it's all your credit. Besides, I submitted the final version of the design, so it has nothing to do with you." When Nanxi suddenly looked up at Lisa, only to see a bitter look on her face. "I demand to see the final draft." Ji Jiaojiao snorted coldly. "When Nanxi, you have been kicked out of this project, you are not qualified." When Nanxi's fist suddenly clenched. "How come I didn't know? Who informed me?" Lisa stepped forward and pulled Wen Nanxi, whispering, "Nanxi, don't argue, this is all arranged by President Fu." For a moment, it was like thunder exploding in his ears, and Wen Nanxi's pupils became a little out of focus. Fu Ciyan knew how hard she worked to follow up on this project. In order to please Ji Jiaojiao, he just casually gave his hard work to others. The sour pain filled my heart. Why should he? At this moment, when Nanxi really wanted to ask Fu Ciyan why he treated her like this. Ji Jiaojiao was so happy when she saw Wen Nanxi's shocked expression. She took a step forward, approached Wen Nanxi, and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear. "I just said it casually, and Brother Yang gave me the project. So what if it's your hard work? Now it's all mine, Wen Nanxi. Brother Yang loves me. What can you use to fight me?" Snap. There was a crisp sound and everyone was stunned. When Nanxi shook his hands, and the slap just now hit Ji Jiaojiao's face to the side. Ji Jiaojiao covered her face in shock. "You dare to hit me?" When Nanxi narrowed his eyes. "I'll hit you if you want. Do I need to pick a day?" Lisa was shocked. This is the future president's wife. Does Wen Nanxi want to do this? She quickly pulled Wen Nanxi away. "Nanxi, are you crazy?" The angrier Wen Nanxi got, the colder his face became. "Ji Jiaojiao, don't force me." "Wen Nanxi." A low and gloomy voice was heard, and everyone turned around instantly. Fu Ciyan was standing at the door of the office, his brows furrowed and his whole body was in extremely low spirits. Ji Jiaojiao whimpered and threw herself into Fu Ciyan's arms, clutching his clothes, tears streaming down her face. "Woo, Brother Yang, Sister Nanxi hit me. What did I do wrong that she has to keep targeting me? It hurts so much, Brother Yang." Fu Ciyan looked at Wen Nanxi with deep eyes. Wen Nanxi apologized to Jiaojiao. Wen Nanxi stood there, with his back straight, looking directly at Fu Ciyan. "What if I don't?" Ji Jiaojiao was still sobbing and called out in a low voice, "Brother Yang." Her eyes were red and she was crying uncontrollably. The hands that were grabbing Fu Ciyan's clothes were trembling slightly, and she looked so pitiful. Fu Ciyan didn't push her away and let Ji Jiaojiao throw herself on his chest, with some emotional fluctuations in his eyes. "You shouldn't have hit Jiaojiao, Wen Nanxi, apologize, and don't make me say it a third time." He. Wen Nanxi sneered softly. Fu Ciyan has always been fair and strict. No matter what happens, he will ask the reason before making a decision. Only with Ji Jiaojiao, he could blame himself without asking for reasons. "My heart feels like it's been entangled in a hemp rope, suffocating and painful. Boss Fu, I just want to ask you one question. Was this project arranged by you?" Fu Ciyan frowned slightly. "Yes, I arranged for Jiaojiao to participate in this project. It's just a project. Is there a problem? When Nanxi's hands at her sides trembled slightly. These words were like a sharp knife stirring in her heart, causing her breathing to stop in pain. He admitted it, so nonchalantly. When Nanxi turned her head away, holding back the sourness in her nose. I don't acknowledge it. You can give it to her, but I want to withdraw all my designs. Ji Jiao cried and coughed twice, and said pitifully. I know Sister Nanxi can't tolerate me, Brother Yang, why don't I just leave? Fu Ciyan frowned, not understanding why when Nanxi was so intolerant of Ji Jiao. When Nanxi, there's no need for you to be so fussy. Jiao has never been a hindrance to you. When Nanxi looked at Fu Ciyan in disbelief, her eyes trembling. Care about it? Fu Ciyan, do you think I'm being unreasonable? Fu Ciyan suddenly felt a little upset. Wasn't what he said clear enough? When Nanxi, don't you understand what I'm saying? When Nanxi's body shook slightly, and the extreme pain seemed to make her unable to feel any information from the outside world. Everyone in the office held their breath, their eyes shifting between the three men. Lisa kept signaling when Nanxi to lower her head and stop going against the president. She was extremely anxious, but when Nanxi remained indifferent. I understand, Mr. Fu. Lisa breathed a sigh of relief, but heard when Nanxi speak again. But I won't apologize. I still say that I can give her the project, but I ask to withdraw the part 1 designed. After saying that, she walked straight to the door. There was no point in her staying any longer. Fu Ciyan grabbed her arm. What do you mean? Can't you be more sensible? When Nanxi tried hard to hold back her tears until her eyes turned red. She spoke word by word. Cannot. Chapter 13 Suspension. It was Ji Jiao who stole her project, so why should she be asked to be sensible? Just because he loves Ji Jiao, can he abuse her at will? Fu Ciyan's heart was filled with anger, and his eyes became darker. Stop it. Make trouble. When Nanxi shook off Fu Ciyan's hand and said sarcastically, I have my fiancée in my arms. It's not good for Mr. Fu to pull her like this. When Nanxi. Fu Ciyan growled, but when Nanxi didn't even bother to look at him. He turned around and walked away without mercy. No one saw the moment she turned around, when Nanxi's tears flowed across her face like beads from a broken string, hit the floor, and disappeared without a trace. Fu Ciyan subconsciously wanted to chase after him, and Ji Jiao immediately cried out, covering her face with horror in her eyes. Brother Yang. I'm bleeding. Am I disfigured? Lisa, who was standing by, gasped when she saw Ji Jiao scratch her face with her fingernails. This woman is quite cruel. Fu Ciyan clenched his fists, thinking of how intimate when Nanxi and Yang were just downstairs. A hint of sarcasm appeared on the corner of his mouth. He picked up Ji Jiao, strode away, and left behind a sentence. When Nanxi will be suspended from his post and will be reinstated when he apologizes. When Nanxi, who had not walked far, paused and turned her head to look, but only saw the back of Fu Ciyan holding Ji Jiao. They looked very close, as if she was the third party. Ji Jiao gave her a smug expression and wrapped her arms around Fu Ciyan's neck. When Nanxi's vision blurred again. He gave a self-deprecating smile but didn't say anything. Yu Zhao coughed, and the employees who were originally watching the fun immediately lowered their heads and pretended to be busy. Mr. Fu doesn't want anyone else to hear about what happened today. Lisa, take care of your people. Lisa nodded silently and asked. So what about this project? Yu Zhao thought about the president's expression just now and said. Let's follow what Mr. Fu decided before. I'll let you know if there are any changes. Lisa felt a little sorry for Wen Nanxi. The design industry values talent very much, and Wen Nanxi is the kind of employee who is both talented and willing to work hard. Today's incident itself is unfair. Wen Nanxi did the main design, and Ji Jiao only changed 2 places that had no impact at all. This custom jewelry became Ji Jiao's. What's even more outrageous is that Wen Nanxi was directly kicked out of the project. Who can tolerate this? Now he has been suspended without any reason. It would be strange if Wen Nanxi could stay. Lisa shook her head bitterly. The design that originally had a good atmosphere became a mess because of Ji Jiao. It's really difficult for her to be a director. When Nanxi left the company and stood by the road, the north wind was blowing and leaves were falling. For a moment, he didn't know where to go. When I closed my eyes, I saw the scene of Fu Ciyan carrying Ji Jiao Jiao away. They haven't divorced yet. She could accept not being loved and could accept divorce, but betrayal was the only thing that made her heart ache. He was such a good person, a young man like the clear wind and bright moon. When Nanxi and Fu Ciyan first met when she was in the third year of junior high school, when she was bullied by her stepbrother Wen Sudong. Wen Sudong said at school that she was the daughter of the nanny and that he often brought a group of little hooligans to bully her, including but not limited to putting a dead mouse in her desk, tearing up her textbooks, and sticking chewing gum in her hair. Her father was indifferent, her stepmother was indulgent, and her teacher was neglected by the Wen family. She had no one to turn to and was often bruised. Until one day she was dragged into the men's restroom by Wen Sudong's gang. She cried until her voice was hoarse, her clothes were torn, and she was extremely desperate. At that moment, Fu Ciyan fell from the sky and protected her. Fu Ciyan was actually a senior in the high school department. He put his school uniform on her, punched those little hooligans one by one into the toilet stall, and then sent himself to the infirmary. He was like a ray of light, cutting through her dark and desolate world. She still kept that school uniform well, it was her only salvation in her desolate years. So 3 years ago, even though she knew Fu Ciyan didn't love her, she still married him, fulfilling her duties as a wife and never overstepping the boundaries. To Wen Nanxi, Fu Ciyan was her benefactor, so she never thought of disturbing him and kept her heart to herself. But Fu Ciyan touched her heart day by day. Every kiss and every word of baby made her let down her guard little by little. The relationship of the past 2 years was like an abyss that swallowed me up, and it was harder than climbing to heaven to climb out. She walked along the road, tears streaming down her face, her eyes blurred and her suppressed emotions choked her in pain. "Sister, I'm giving you a flower. Don't be unhappy." A childish voice came into her ears, and she blinked to see the little kid in front of her clearly. She was holding a small daisy and smiling brightly, revealing a few little white teeth. "Don't be sad, nothing is impossible." The little girl's mother handed over 2 tissues. When Nanxi took the tissues and flowers, wiped the tears from her face, and looked up again, looking more resolute. "Thanks. You're right, there's nothing to get by. It's just a relationship that went awry." When Nanxi calmed down, went to a copy shop on the street, and printed out a divorce agreement. They had signed a prenuptial agreement, so there was nothing to divide in the divorce. All they had to do was sign the agreement and go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to register for divorce. Looking up at the sky, when Nanxi let out a long sigh. She didn't want to be the vicious female supporting role who blocked the love between Fu Ciyan and Ji Jiao Jiao. It was only 43 days, so what did it matter if it ended early? When we got back to the villa, Mrs. Yu was leaning on the sofa, watching a skit with one leg crossed and melon seed shells scattered all over the floor. Thinking of Yi Xiaohua's question, when Nanxi frowned slightly. "Sister Yu, you were the one who said I often stay out all night." Mrs. Yu paused, as if she had not expected Wen Nanxi to ask so directly. However, Wen Nanxi has always been easy to talk to, and Mrs. Yu did not take her questions to heart. "Isn't this the truth? After all, you are the wife of the Fu family. It's shameful for you to stay out of the house and fool around with other men all day long." Wen Nanxi looked indifferent. "Sister Yu, please show me the evidence to prove that I was fooling around with other men, otherwise I will fire you." Yu's wife froze for a moment. After being shocked, she became furious and pointed at Wen Nanxi's nose and said, "What right do you have to fire me? You're not the one who pays me. Miss Jiao Jiao is back. Do you think you can stay as Mrs. Fu for much longer? Since I am still Mrs. Fu, is it difficult to fire a nanny who is not to my liking? Do you need me to tell you how many times you have left your post?" When Nanxi raised her eyes indifferently. The last 2 times she had stomach problems at night, Mrs. Yu was not there either time. It was the first time that Mrs. Yu saw such an expression on Wen Nanxi's face. Cold, resolute, and unquestionable, this made her heart stagnate. Then she came to her senses. Wen Nanxi was just an abandoned woman who was about to be kicked out of the house. She said with sarcasm, "You still want evidence? There's a surveillance camera at the door. Didn't you go out with strange men those nights?" Chapter 14 Menstrual Period. When Nanxi frowned and said sternly, "So you were there those 2 nights, then why didn't you come out when I called you? Do you know that I was about to faint from the stomachache? Also, you said I went out with a strange man, right? Do you know what online ride-hailing is? I asked you to go to the hospital but you were not there. Do you want me to die here? She was really speechless. She was sick and needed to go to the hospital, but when she called an online taxi, a strange man came to pick her up. I don't know whether this person is really stupid or just pretending to be stupid. Sister Yu coughed with a guilty conscience. I fell asleep, I didn't hear you calling me. When Nanxi snorted in his heart. Mrs. Yu used to take care of Ji Jiaojiao and treated her like the apple of her eye. Later, when Ji Jiaojiao went abroad, she followed Fu Ciyan to the bridal villa. He had always disliked her, excluded her openly and secretly, and cooked dishes that she didn't like. Ji Jiaojiao's things were sorted out by Yu's wife, and Fu Ciyan never let her enter that room. She usually doesn't bother to care about things, so does that mean she's easy to bully in Yu Soa's eyes? Seeing that she was in pain, she pretended to be stupid. What was the purpose of such a nanny? Was she here to make things difficult for herself? You're fired, now pack your things and get out of here. Mrs. Yu didn't expect when Nanxi to really fire her, and she suddenly became anxious. When Nanxi, you're almost fired, what right do you have to fire me? When Nanxi didn't want to waste time talking to her, so he turned around and went upstairs, leaving a message. I'll give you half an hour, otherwise I'll ask security to throw you out. When she reached the bedroom, when Nanxi realized how exhausted she was, as if all her energy had been drained away. The pain in her lower abdomen worsened, and her aunt came to visit. When Nanxi suffered from severe dysmenorrhea. She was in excruciating pain on the first day of every period. She simply tidied herself up, unable to bear the exhaustion, and crawled into bed and fell asleep. She didn't know how long she slept before she was awakened by the noise downstairs. Some people were crying, some were arguing, and when Nanxi was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. Sir, you are finally back. Madam wants to fire me and ban me from the industry. Isn't this trying to drive me to death? Brother Yang, I must have made Sister Nanxi unhappy, so she wants to fire Sister Yu. I can apologize to Sister Nanxi, even kneeling down, as long as she can forgive me. When Nanxi suppressed his anger and watched from downstairs. Har har, what a big show. There was still a band-aid on Ji Jiaojiao's face. Yu Soa also acted like she was bullied and complained to Fu Ciyan about everything she had done, as if she was such a bad person. She endured the pain and walked down the stairs step by step, her voice cold. Then kneel down. If you want to kneel down, I will satisfy you. The moment she saw when Nanxi, Ji Jiaojiao was like a frightened little rabbit. She covered her face and hid behind Fu Ciyan, subconsciously avoiding his eyes as if she was very scared. Fu Ciyan looked up at when Nanxi, and when he saw her pale face, his brows furrowed. The change in his facial expression did not escape when Nanxi's eyes. Seeing that he was so annoyed with her, when Nanxi couldn't help but feel a pain in her heart. Sister Nanxi, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Can you please not make things difficult for Sister Yu? She is innocent. Ji Jiaojiao bit her lower lip and pretended to kneel down to apologize to Wen Nanxi. Fu Ciyan naturally couldn't let Ji Jiaojiao really kneel down, so he pulled her. Ji Jiaojiao climbed onto Fu Ciyan's arm and sobbed softly. Brother Yang, just let me kneel. As long as Sister Nanxi can calm down, I'll do anything. Even if she slaps me again, it doesn't matter. She mentioned the slap she received this afternoon again, and Fu Ciyan's eyes darkened a little. You haven't apologized to Jiaojiao yet. When Nanxi chuckled, you have already suspended me, and you still want me to apologize. Or you can just fire me directly, so that I won't be an eyesore to you. Her words were piercing, and Fu Ciyan frowned. Do you really have to talk to me like this? The pain in her lower abdomen became more and more obvious. When Nanxi didn't want to say more to him, whatever you think. Seeing that she didn't want to say more, Fu Ciyan asked directly, what's the matter with Sister Yu? Why did you fire her? Is it because Jiaojiao made you unhappy? When Nanxi suddenly felt so bored. After 3 years of marriage, it seemed that Fu Ciyan had never understood her. In his eyes, everything she did was unreasonable, and he was even unwilling to ask her if she had been wronged. I don't know when it started, but the love between the two people has become just tit for tat, and they no longer have the desire to confide in each other. When Nanxi's eyes became increasingly dim, and even her lips lost their color. She needed to rest now. Because I'm Mrs. Fu, don't I have the right to fire a nanny? If you feel it's inappropriate, then let's get a divorce. When Nanxi didn't expect that the word divorce could be said so easily. Perhaps she had already given up hope, and all these things had worn out all her love. Fu Ciyan's fists suddenly tightened. Do you really want a divorce? When Nanxi hummed coldly and slowly stood up. She was sweating from the pain and was afraid she would faint if she didn't go upstairs. Ji Jiaojia was so excited that she could hardly control herself. When Nanxi filed for a divorce, although she was happy in her heart, she still had to save face. She pitifully grabbed Fu Ciyan's arm. Brother Yang, please don't quarrel because of me, it's all Jiaojia's fault. Fu Ciyan was feeling very irritated and the air pressure around him dropped by several degrees. When he heard what Ji Jiaojia said, he nodded in agreement. It was obvious that his relationship with Wen Nanxi was good before. Although it was not warm, it had not reached this point. But ever since Ji Jiaojia came back, their relationship deteriorated rapidly and was out of his control. Ji Jiaojia. She was just being polite. Seeing that the battle was in a stalemate, Yu Saw asked weakly, Mr. Fu, then I. Fu Ciyan's eyes were still fixed on Wen Nanxi, who was walking up the stairs slowly. He didn't think there was anything wrong with Yu Saw, and said, Stay, don't go. Hearing Fu Ciyan's words, Wen Nanxi felt stabbed in the heart again. Is it a punishment to leave a nanny who bullies her to live with her day and night? Does he hate himself so much? The pain in her lower abdomen intensified again, as if it was being stirred. Suddenly, she felt a black screen in front of her eyes. Her weak legs could no longer support her body and she fell headfirst. At the end of her consciousness, she felt as if she had fallen into a warm embrace. Maybe it's an illusion. Fu Ciyan's heart was pounding with fear when he saw Wen Nanxi in his arms. He almost failed to catch Wen Nanxi. He knew that Wen Nanxi was on her menstrual period, so he came back today on purpose. The person in his arms seemed to be a little lighter than usual, with his eyebrows tightly closed and his face so pale that it was almost transparent, which made his heart tighten again. He picked up Wen Nanxi and left a message. Mrs. Yu, cook a bowl of brown sugar and longan soup and send it up. Chapter 15. I think I loved it. Ji Jiaojia watched Fu Ciyan carry Wen Nanxi up the stairs, her eyes red with hatred. Wen Nanxi had already filed for divorce, and then she pretended to faint in order to keep Fu Ciyan. This was really too much. If Mrs. Yu hadn't called her today, she wouldn't have known that Wen Nanxi was so despicable. Ms. Jiaojia, what should we do now? Ji Jiaojia gritted her teeth. Since she was here, she would not leave easily. Go make brown sugar and longan soup. Fu Ciyan gently placed Wen Nanxi on the bed, poured her a glass of warm water, and skillfully took out the painkillers she usually took from the drawer. Open your mouth. His voice was low and gentle. Wen Nanxi's head was groggy and she opened her mouth subconsciously. Fu Ciyan couldn't help feeling distressed when he saw tiny beads of sweat appearing on her forehead due to the pain. She had been recovering well in the past 2 years, so why did the pain become more and more severe in the past year? He rubbed his hands to warm them, placed them on Wen Nanxi's lower abdomen, and gently rubbed circles until the person in his arms relaxed his brows, breathed evenly, and fell asleep. Looking at Wen Nanxi's peaceful sleeping face, Fu Ciyan's eyes were filled with reluctance. I don't know how long it took, but Ji Jiaojia pushed open the bedroom door. Brother Yang, the brown sugar and longan soup is ready. Fu Ciyan turned his head indifferently. Keep the soup warm, you go out. Brother Yang. Go out. Ji Jiaojia's eyes turned red at that moment and she turned around and ran out. She had never seen Fu Ciyan look at someone so affectionately, never. The resentment and jealousy in her heart were about to consume her. Ji Jiaojia was almost going crazy with jealousy. She slammed the bowl of brown sugar and longan soup to the ground, then fell to the ground with a scream, and then stared at the bedroom door. Not long after, the door opened. Ji Jiaojia breathed a sigh of relief and reached out to Fu Ciyan aggrievedly. Brother Yang, I accidentally fell down. Fu Ciyan frowned slightly. Speak softly, don't disturb Nanxi. Ji Jiaojia's teeth were about to break, but she couldn't ruin her innocent personality, so she lowered her head and whispered. I'm sorry, Brother Yang. I won't do it again next time. Well, you go back first. Ji Jiaojia didn't expect Fu Ciyan to be so cold to her at the banquet and not care about her at all. Before she went abroad, Fu Ciyan had always been very good to her. She blamed all their hatred on Wen Nanxi and continued to show weakness. Brother Yang, it hurts so much. Fu Ciyan looked a little impatient. Let sister Yu take a look at you. If it doesn't work, go to the hospital. Ji Jiaojiao's ultimate goal is not to go to the hospital. She must find a way to stay in the villa so that she has a chance to drive when Nanxi away. I'm fine, brother Yang, you go and accompany sister Nanxi. Don't blame her. She probably just said something in anger when she asked for a divorce. Fu Ciyan's expression looked better then, and he turned around to go into the room. Brother Yang, can I stay today? It's already very late, and I sprained my ankle and it hurts a bit. Fu Ciyan didn't think much about it. There were plenty of guest rooms in the villa anyway, so he agreed and went back to the bedroom to accompany Wen Nanxi. He climbed onto the bed quietly, held Wen Nanxi in his arms, and placed his hands on Wen Nanxi's belly to warm her so that she could sleep more comfortably. Wen Nanxi slept very peacefully this time. Her lower abdomen seemed to be wrapped by something. The constant warmth made her body gradually relax and she no longer felt uncomfortable. She was awakened by the urge to urinate at night. When she opened her eyes, she found herself locked tightly in his arms. The familiar cold fragrance coming from her nose made her emotions surge again. When she was in junior high school, when Sudong pushed her into an icy river, freezing her body. In addition, she did not take care of herself afterwards, so she suffered from dysmenorrhea. They had just gotten married at that time and were not familiar with each other yet. Fu Ciyan was very gentlemanly to her and did good things in every aspect except for being less intimate. The change in her relationship began with her first menstrual period after marriage. It was the middle of winter at that time, and because she was wearing a dress to the party and drank a glass of cold wine, her period came on violently. She was so pale in pain that she couldn't utter a word. She squatted on the ground and retched in pain. Fu Ciyan, who was always calm and rational, was frightened. He thought the wine was poisonous. He rescued the person and ran to the hospital, only to find out that her dysmenorrhea was so severe. That day, Fu Ciyan brought her home from the hospital. The two had just gotten married and there were no sanitary napkins at home. He could obviously send Sister Yu to buy some, but he went there himself. He picked out all kinds of brands and could even explain the benefits of each brand. Then, for that week, Fu Ciyan treated her like a fragile baby. He didn't let her eat any cold or spicy food, and he didn't allow her to touch cold water. He even didn't let her do too much work, for fear that she would get tired. He would hold her in his arms like this every night to sleep, with his big hands on her belly, listening to his strong heartbeat in his chest and his warm breath in her ears. He even cooked brown sugar and longan soup for her himself. That bowl of soup is so sweet. When Nanxi had never tasted such a sweet soup before. At that moment, she couldn't control her heart and was moved. Later, Fu Ciyan started to find a Chinese medicine doctor to regulate her body. Chinese medicine tastes bitter, but he would always coax her to finish it, then peel off a piece of chocolate for her and praise her, saying, "You're such a great baby." After drinking it for half a year, her dysmenorrhea problem was relieved a lot, but she still felt a little uncomfortable every time. Although she has almost recovered, Fu Ciyan has to accompany her during every menstrual period in the past 3 years. Very safe and comfortable. Until a year ago, their relationship took a sharp turn for the worse. The dysmenorrhea that had almost recovered came back again, each time becoming more severe than the last. She really longed for this only warmth. Sleep well and don't make a fuss. Fu Ciyan's hoarse voice sounded in his ears. When Nanxi blushed a little and said in a low voice, "I need to go to the bathroom." After hearing this, Fu Ciyan let go of her hand, stood up and turned on the desk lamp. "Are you hungry? Do you want something to eat?" When Nanxi was a little stunned. His familiar words seemed to indicate that nothing had ever happened between the two of them. She answered subconsciously, "Not very hungry." Fu Ciyan was sleepy, obviously he hadn't woken up yet. His eyes looked very lazy. He had been following her footsteps. After hearing her answer, he pulled her into his arms and found a comfortable position to hug her. "Then sleep a little longer. Does your stomach still hurt?" "Much better." Fu Ciyan hummed and turned off the desk lamp, and the room fell into darkness again. They were very close to each other. The room was quiet and the only sound was his even breathing. His hand was still on Wen Nanxi's belly, gently massaging it. Wen Nanxi suddenly felt a little soft-hearted. The divorce agreement will have to wait. There are still 42 days left. When he woke up in the morning, Wen Nanxi felt that he was almost recovered. Beside his bed were the painkillers and water prepared by Fu Ciyan. A warm feeling welled up in my heart. At least in his heart, he must have loved her. Chapter 16. It turns out that those good things are never unique. Feeling hungry, when Nanxi changed his clothes and went downstairs, but he didn't expect to run into Ji Jiaojiao as soon as he went out. She raised her innocent face with a bright smile. Sister Nanxi, you're awake. Brother Yang has to go to the company first for something urgent. When Nanxi nodded, not wanting to talk any more to Ji Jiaojiao. In fact, she felt sorry for the poor girl at first. Born in poverty, her parents died when she was young, and she was raised by her brother. Her brother and Fu Ciyan are friends and have a very good relationship. The Fu family is wealthy and powerful, and they have many enemies. Once, Fu Ciyan was kidnapped, and only Ji Jinyan was with him at the time. He was killed while waiting for rescue and died in front of Fu Ciyan. This incident made Fu Ciyan feel extremely guilty, so he adopted Ji Jinyan's only sister Ji Jiaojiao. Ji Jiaojiao became the goddaughter of the Fu family. She was only 15 years old at that time, the age when she was just beginning to fall in love. Out of guilt, Fu Ciyan always responded to her requests and did everything himself, no matter how big or small, which made Ji Jiaojiao have thoughts that she shouldn't have. In fact, Ji Jiaojiao's fault cannot be blamed for this matter. After all, Fu Ciyan is a person who can easily make people moved. There is no blood relationship, but they live together day and night, caring for each other, and it seems that everything is a natural thing. So Ji Jiaojiao publicly confessed her love to Fu Ciyan at her 18th birthday party, and the words, Ji Jiaojiao loves Fu Ciyan, were written on the big screens of various shopping malls in Kyoto. This forbidden love between brother and sister made the Fu family famous. The Fu family's hostile companies secretly fanned the flames and criticized the situation, taking the opportunity to suppress the Fu family, causing the Fu family's stock price to plummet. Later, Ji Jiaojiao was abandoned by the Fu family and sent abroad. To be honest, when Nanxi admires Ji Jiaojiao's character of daring to love and hate. When she married Fu Ciyan, Ji Jiaojiao took the initiative to add her WeChat. Everything was normal at first, but later she started sending some suggestive words and photos. When Nanxi didn't care about those things in the first 2 years. After all, it was all in the past, and she believed in Fu Ciyan. But when she broke the ceramic cup that time, their relationship took a sharp turn for the worse, and she had to face up to Ji Jiaojiao's position in Fu Ciyan's heart. During the days when Ji Jiaojiao returned to China, when Nanxi realized that she would never be as good as Ji Jiaojiao. Seeing that when Nanxi ignored her, Ji Jiaojiao was not angry. Instead, she took a few quick steps and followed when Nanxi. It was too late yesterday, so Brother Yang asked me to stay overnight. He once said that he would reserve a room for me no matter where he is in the future. Sister Nanxi, don't mind it. When Nanxi lowered his eyes and distanced himself from her calmly. Yeah, I don't care. Ji Jiaojiao suddenly lowered her head, pulled when Nanxi's sleeve, and spoke carefully. Sister Nanxi, I accidentally fell last night, and Brother Yang stayed with me for a while, but I soon asked him to go back to accompany you, so don't be angry. When Nanxi frowned slightly when he saw that she was apologizing on the surface but actually showing off. Is Fu Ciyan also a master of time management? While coaxing herself, she also did not forget to care about her white moonlight. Why bother? She is not the kind of person who will keep pestering others. She slept very soundly yesterday and really didn't know whether Fu Ciyan was always by her side. Ji Jiaojiao would not lie about this, and this is normal considering the position Ji Jiaojiao holds in Fu Ciyan's heart. Thinking of this, she said casually. Well, I'm not angry. After hearing this, Ji Jiaojiao smiled. Sister Nanxi, I'm glad you're not angry. By the way, you had menstrual cramps yesterday, right? I had menstrual cramps before, and it was Brother Yang who found a Chinese doctor for me. It took a long time to cure it. Do you want me to take you to the Chinese doctor's clinic to have a checkup? When Nanxi paused, a hint of triumphant smile flashed across Ji Jiaojiao's eyes. Actually, Brother Yang is very caring. When I was young, I didn't know how to take care of myself, and it was Brother Yang who took care of me. He even cooked brown sugar and longan soup for me. Hey, I asked Sister Yu to cook a bowl for you, too, and added some ginger. You'll feel better if you drink it. When Nanxi suddenly felt her body was a little cold. It turns out that Fu Ciyan's kindness to her was not unique to her. It turns out that he didn't think about how to take care of his body because he loved himself, but because he was used to doing those things and was familiar with them. The reason why he knew so much about sanitary napkins must be because of Ji Jiao. When Nanxi understood that sentence at this moment. That is not my moon, but the moonlight shines on me. An emotion suddenly arose in Wen Nanxi's heart. At this moment, she was really envious of Ji Jiao. She was envious to the point of jealousy because she received so much love. But what made her fall into it was all false. Looking at the bowl of brown sugar and longan soup on the dining table, Wen Nanxi's eyes darkened. Wen Nanxi said in a cold voice, "You don't need to show off how good he is to you. He is a perfect man to you, but he is just a fickle scumbag to me. I don't care about him. If you like him, I'll give him to you." Snap. A crisp sound came from the door. When Nanxi turned around subconsciously, only to see Fu Ciyan standing at the door with a cold face. Ji Jiao called out softly, "Brother Yang." Sister Nanxi only said those words in anger, "Don't take them to heart." Fu Ciyan threw the package in his hand into the trash can, and his voice seemed to contain ice chips. "You haven't learned your lesson from last time? You didn't even check if there was anyone around when you spread the rumor? How are you going to explain this time?" When Nanxi didn't want to meet his cold eyes and subconsciously looked away. She had nothing to explain. His partiality was clearly revealed in every incident. Even if he loved Ji Jiao deeply, but he openly cheated on her before they divorced, what else could he be but a fickle scumbag? When Fu Ciyan saw that she was refusing to communicate again, he felt his temples throbbing. "When Nanxi, you are awesome, do you have a conscience?" He didn't sleep well the night before yesterday. He kept Wen Nanxi warm in her stomach, got up early in the morning to cook brown sugar and longan soup for her, and even went out to buy her favorite breakfast. So this is how she greeted him. A fickle scumbag? When Nanxi didn't know what he was saying, but she felt a wave of soreness filling her chest, and she didn't know how to respond to him. Once again, Fu Ciyan didn't get a response. He laughed out of anger, but that smile was cold and his voice was obviously filled with suppressed anger. "When Nanxi, you are really amazing. Who do you think I am? You can give in just like that." When Nanxi turned his head and whispered, "You are nothing. Fu Ciyan." Bang. He slammed the door hard, and the three people in the room shivered in unison. When Nanxi sniffed, took somewhat stiff steps, sat down at the table, and took a sip of the bowl of brown sugar and longan soup. Sour and bitter. Not sweet at all. Chapter 17, Men should eat less coriander, it kills sperm. "Sister Nanxi, how can you say that about Brother Yang?" Ji Jiao tested it cautiously. When Nanxi put down the soup spoon, with a hint of sarcasm on his lips. "Oh, it's all my fault. I'll go apologize to him and coax him. If I coax him well, he won't divorce me. What do you say?" Ji Jiao. She didn't dare speak anymore. Ji Jiao had long noticed that Fu Ciyan had special feelings for Wen Nanxi, and since she returned to China, Fu Ciyan had always kept his distance from her, so she didn't dare to take the risk. What if Fu Ciyan was really coaxed by Wen Nanxi? Then what does she have to do with it? Wen Nanxi didn't have much appetite, so he ate something quickly and went upstairs. Ji Jiao went to the company. The atmosphere in the entire Fu headquarters was extremely low, and everyone was busy working. She went all the way to the president's office, and as soon as she reached the door, she heard Fu Ciyan cursing. Several executives were scolded and left in disgrace. Yu Zhao stood beside Fu Ciyan, not daring to breathe, for fear of implicating innocent people. "Brother Yang, I brought you some breakfast." Ji Jiao stood timidly at the door, her voice gentle and considerate, as if she wanted to show concern but was too embarrassed to come forward. When Fu Ciyan saw Ji Jiao coming, his expression looked better, but the depression in his heart had not yet dissipated. "Bring it here." Ji Jiao ran a few steps and put the lunchbox on the desk as if she had received a blessing. Inside was a bowl of millet porridge and some steamed dumplings as a side dish. Fu Ciyan drank his porridge slowly and asked casually, "Did she drink the bowl of brown sugar and longan soup?" Ji Jiao lowered her head subconsciously, then looked up cautiously, as if she wanted to say something but didn't dare to. This made Fu Ciyan frown again, and his voice became much lower. "What did she say?" Ji Jiao whispered. "Sister Nanxi didn't drink it. She said she wouldn't drink the soup cooked by a scumbag." Bang. The bowl of porridge was placed heavily on the table, and Fu Ciyan's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Ji Jiao quickly comforted. Brother Yang, don't be angry. Sister Nanxi is just angry. She definitely didn't mean to call you a scumbag. Fu Ciyan felt that the porridge was sour and bitter, and difficult to swallow. He pressed his forehead in annoyance. If you don't want to eat it, throw it away. Seeing the fire was starting, Ji Jiao struck while the iron was hot. Brother Yang, Sister Nanxi is actually just angry about the project. Otherwise, I'll leave Aurora. Fu Ciyan felt a little soft-hearted when he saw her pitiful look. After all, she was the sister he raised himself, and her brother died because of him, so he always felt guilty towards Ji Jiao and comforted her. It has nothing to do with you, you don't have to blame yourself. Ji Jiao listened, holding her chin with both hands, her eyes sparkling. Brother Yang, how about I help you persuade Sister Nanxi? After all, she is also my sister-in-law. I want to see you guys are doing well. Can I stay in your villa for the next few days? Fu Ciyan was a little surprised. Do you and her get along? Ji Jiao nodded vigorously. After all, we are both girls. I always feel that my sister-in-law has some misunderstandings about me, so she is targeting me. I will have a good talk with her when she calms down. I don't want you to quarrel all the time. Fu Ciyan didn't expect Ji Jiao to have such intention, but she was right. When Nanxi always refused to communicate with him recently, and he didn't know where to start. Women are always easier to talk to. Then stay here. I have to go on a business trip these days. You should spend some time with her. Ji Jiao smiled happily and secretly planned how to kick Nanxi out of the villa. She wants Nanxi to be ruined. Nanxi rested for a day and then felt her stomach was better. In the evening, Fu Ciyan and Ji Jiao came back together. Fu Ciyan was still wearing the suit he had worn when he went out in the morning. The stiff fabric made him look tall and straight. His indifferent eyes swept across her lightly without stopping for a moment. The girl next to him was obviously taller than him. She was lively and playful, pure and innocent. They were talking and laughing in a very harmonious manner. She subconsciously took the coat that Fu Ciyan took off and hung it aside. Nanxi felt as if a jar of vinegar had been overturned in her heart, which was even sourer than the aged vinegar. Because she actually felt that Fu Ciyan and Ji Jiao were quite a good match. The overbearing president and the cute little princess, who are also pseudo-sisters, would create a taboo atmosphere in the novel. She didn't have this feeling the first few times Fu Ciyan hugged Ji Jiao. After all, Ji Jiao was injured those 2 times, so it was understandable that Fu Ciyan cared about her. But now the intimacy and naturalness between the two of them really made her eyes soar. Mrs. Yu greeted him warmly and asked about his well-being. Nanxi sat at the dining table by himself, isolating the 3 people in the living room by himself. Fu Ciyan licked his back teeth when he saw her like this. There is a feeling of being treated coldly. Why, am I, a two-faced scumbag, coming back for dinner? Am I bothering you? Nanxi paused for a moment and looked over. Then you leave. Fu Ciyan. Ji Jiao picked up a piece of pork ribs for Fu Ciyan. Sister Nanxi, please stop being angry. This is Brother Yang's villa. Nanxi put down his chopsticks. Oh, I'll go then. There were 10 dishes, half of which she didn't like, and the other half had coriander in them. There is a pair of scumbag man and bitch showing off their love in front of me. This meal is inedible, it's unlucky. She walked to the first staircase and turned to look at Fu Ciyan coldly. Men should eat less coriander, it kills sperm. Fu Ciyan. It turns out that women who are menstruating should not be messed with. Nanxi put on her coat and went out. Although the project was snatched away by Ji Jiao, Lisa still gave her a bonus. With money in her pocket, wouldn't it be nice for her to go out and eat? The sound of the door closing seemed to be filled with indifference. Fu Ciyan looked at Sister Yu. Sister Yu, what did I say last time? Mrs. Yu was a little embarrassed. Aren't you and Miss Jiao here? You both love coriander, and it's because she made 2 dishes by herself. The more Yu's sister spoke, the lower her voice became, but she still grumbled unconvinced. Not eating cilantro is just pretentious. Just eat it when you're hungry. Fu Ciyan threw away his chopsticks with a fake smile. Who said I like cilantro? Mrs. Yu choked and said, Haven't you liked eating it since you were a child? Fu Ciyan lost his appetite, stood up from the table and walked towards the door. No, it kills sperm. Mrs. Yu. Also, if you can't do the job here, Sister Yu, I can replace you with someone else. The door was slammed again, and Yu Soa was so scared that her face changed. Ji Jiaojiao didn't dare to say a word the whole time. She could tell that Fu Ciyan was really angry. Fu Ciyan went out and got in the car. He pointed at the online car-hailing vehicle in front of him and said to Xiao Li, "See that car? Follow her." Xiao Li responded and quickly stepped on the accelerator, secretly complaining in his heart. Why is the president still playing the game of her running away from his wife with his wife? A man's heart is like a needle in the sea, it is impossible to guess. Chapter 18. Ji Jiaojiao is afraid of the dark. Won't you go to accompany her? When Nanxi made an appointment with Fu Ciyan to eat at an old private restaurant. The environment here is good, the food is delicious, and it is very private. It requires reservations. Yang is one of the shareholders of this private restaurant and the private room is reserved for her all year round. Fu Ciyan was still driving her Mercedes-Benz sports car, wearing a red windbreaker, looking bold and generous. When she saw Nanxi get out of the car, she gave her a bear hug in a hurry. "Baby Tilder, why are you so thin again? You don't have breasts anymore, and you don't feel good anymore." Nanxi knocked away Fu Ciyan's dirty hands and protected her chest. "Stop your hooliganism. I'm hungry and need to eat." Fu Ciyan came up to him with a smile, put his arm around Nanxi's arm, and they entered the box together. Fu Ciyan looked at Nanxi and saw that she was with Fu Ciyan, heaved a slight sigh of relief, got out of the car and followed them. The meal was a very pleasant one. The warm soup warmed Nanxi's body, and the depression and fatigue she had felt during this period were temporarily forgotten. She and Fu Ciyan have known each other for many years. They were friends in college. Her family runs a media company. But it is not her turn to inherit the company. Her only value is to form marriages and gain benefits for her own company. She was not convinced and had a falling out with her family during the blind date. She came to Kyoto alone and achieved some success in just a few years. Now she is a gold medal agent. "You haven't been on business trips lately?" Fu Ciyan shook his head. "I'm tired and need to take a break." "Do you still have annual leave? Let's go out and play together." Nanxi was silent for a moment, then said casually, "I was suspended." Fu Ciyan immediately noticed that something was wrong with Nanxi. "Suspended? Why?" Nanxi wiped her mouth and told everyone what had happened in the past few days. She was so angry that she smashed the bowl. "Damn it, I've been away from Kyoto for a few days. How dare that beast Fu Ciyan bully you like that?" Nanxi looked calm. Although she was sad, she was no longer as painful as she was at the beginning. "I can't help it. It's his fault that Bai Yueguang doesn't like me. You know Fu Ciyan is a protective person. Fu Ciyan is well known for protecting his people. Wen Sudong had always bullied her in school. After Fu Ciyan helped him, her father was afraid of offending the Fu family, so he transferred Wen Sudong to a private school full of rich second generations. At that time, the Wen family's company was on the rise, and Wen Sudong got to know many rich second generations, who often brought people to bully and suppress her. After Nanxi and Fu Ciyan got married, they did not restrain themselves. Once when they met at a banquet, Wen Sudong and his group of cronies made her kneel down and lick their shoes. Later, these rich second generations stayed in the hospital for half a month before they were able to get out of bed. From then on, they never dared to trouble her again. "The summer weather makes my teeth itch, and my fingers snap. We have to find a way to punish him. Don't crack your fingers like that. It's bad for your joints." Nanxi turned around and found Yang and Shen Yuchuan standing at the door. That sentence was said by Shen Yuchuan. Nanxi stood up and called out, Yang, Dr. Shen." It happened that Yang was also having dinner here with Shen Yuchuan today. When he heard the sound of something being smashed, he subconsciously came over to check, only to find that it was his own family. Yang sat next to Nanxi. "You don't even call me brother when you're having dinner. Your relationship has faded." Nanxi smiled and said, "You are here now, so I'll give you a chance to pay the bill for me." Yang looked sad, "So I'm just your ATM." Nanxi, "What else?" Everyone present was laughing together and the atmosphere became harmonious. Shen Yuchuan looked at Wen Nanxi's still pale face and got an occupational disease. Have you taken your medicine on time? Go for a checkup when you have time in the next 2 days. Wen Nanxi sat upright. She was always a little nervous when facing the doctor. Yeah, it's all healed now. It doesn't hurt anymore. Shen Yuchuan looked at her expression and frowned slightly. Don't take it lightly. The stomach is an emotional organ, so it's important to keep your mood happy. Wen Nanxi lowered his head slightly and responded. Fu Ciyan saw that the situation had cooled down, and he spoke hurriedly. Yang, Dr. Shen, Nanxi and I are planning to go out and play. Are you free? Do you want to join us? Yang raised his eyebrows slightly. Of course he is free to accompany my little Nanxi, but Yuchuan is not free, he still has to go to work. I'm free. Shen Yuchuan put down his teacup and spoke, which made Yang look sideways. Do you have leave? Can the dean let you go? Shen Yuchuan said calmly, I still have annual leave to take, so I can go out. Wen Nanxi inexplicably felt that the atmosphere was a little awkward, but she couldn't tell what was awkward about it. What was originally a trip for 2 people turned into a trip for 4 people. A few people left the box chatting and laughing, and no one noticed Fu Ciyan sitting in the hall, staring at Wen Nanxi and Yang with dangerous and cold eyes. Fu Ciyan originally wanted to take Wen Nanxi back to his apartment, but Wen Nanxi thought that he had to go out the next day and had to pack his luggage, so he insisted on returning to the villa. When Wen Nanxi got home, he found that Ji Jiaojiao had not left yet. She was sitting cross-legged on the blanket on the balcony reading a book. When she saw Wen Nanxi coming back, she immediately smiled. Sister Nanxi, I forgot to tell you that Brother Yang asked me to live in the villa during this period. I am afraid of the dark, so it would be better if he accompanies me. This way we can go to work together every day, which is more convenient. Oh, you can stay as long as you want. Wen Nanxi was a little indifferent. Anyway, they were going to get divorced soon. Although the wedding house was in her name, the money was paid by Fu Ciyan and had nothing to do with her. Whether the owner of this villa changes or not has little to do with her. It's just a bit unlucky. With Ji Jiaojiao's personality, you can't tell what kind of trap she will be dug in the future. It looks like finding a house is something that needs to be put on the agenda. When Nanxi packed the luggage she would take tomorrow, put it in the cupboard, washed up and went to bed. Just a few minutes after the lights were turned off, I heard the sound of a door opening. The light from outside came in, and Wen Nanxi frowned. Why are you back? Fu Ciyan had a gloomy expression on his face and stood with his back to the light, making it difficult for Wen Nanxi to see him clearly. She could only feel the chill emanating from him. Can't I come back? Wen Nanxi, do you still remember that I am your husband? Return their husband, or the ex-husband. Wen Nanxi complained in her heart and went back into bed. Oh, then please do as you please. Fu Ciyan took off his coat and walked to the bedside. Where did you go today? Who were you with? Wen Nanxi was puzzled by the question, but still answered. I went to eat and found a restaurant that didn't serve cilantro. Fu Ciyan was silent for a moment, then began to explain. I've already told Mrs. Yu that she won't put coriander in it anymore. Wen Nanxi was surprised by his rare explanation. She leaned over to look at him. There was an indescribable feeling on his face, as if he was angry and aggrieved. No need, Sister Yu is mainly taking care of you, don't worry about me, I'm going to sleep, you go first. Go? This is my bedroom, where do you want me to go? Fu Ciyan felt like his fists were about to harden. Wen Nanxi. Ji Jiaojiao is afraid of the dark, won't you go and accompany her? Wen Nanxi, are you so anxious to push me out? Chapter 19, You are good at medicine, can you cure love brain? Fu Ciyan was really furious. He was supposed to go on a business trip yesterday, but he postponed it out of consideration for Wen Nanxi's menstrual period. So Wen Nanxi actually went out to eat with another man and then kicked him out when she got home. And pushed him into the arms of another woman. Did she really not care? Wen Nanxi, do you have a heart? Wen Nanxi was a little confused by the question. Then, I'm leaving. Wen Nanxi thought about it for a while. Fu Ciyan was so angry probably because he felt that he was the owner of the villa, and it might be a bit embarrassing for him to be kicked out of the master bedroom by her. So she slowly sat up from the bed. The mint green silk suspender nightgown made her look fresh and refined, and the expression on her face was nonchalant. Okay, I'll make room for you. I'll go to the guest room and let you have the bedroom. Fu Ciyan almost gnashed his teeth and grabbed Wen Nanxi's wrist. What on earth do you want to do? Wen Nanxi frowned slightly, and the hand holding her wrist immediately relaxed a little. She sighed softly, hiding her emotions, and spoke to him from the bottom of her heart. I didn't mean to do anything, Fu Ciyan. You and Ji Jiao have been together for so many years. Since you've kept her, treat her well. Don't let anything happen to her or she'll blame me. I can't bear it. Fu Ciyan's eyes were deep. Wen Nanxi, Jiao is my sister, don't think of us as such dirty things. Dirty? Wen Nanxi sneered, okay, it's all my fault for having dirty thoughts. I'm going to sleep, don't bother me. She really couldn't understand why these two people were so affectionate to each other and yet they still said that she had dirty thoughts. He really is both responsible and insolent. Wen Nanxi shrank back into the bed, with her back facing Fu Ciyan, and rolled herself into a ball with the quilt covering half of her face, refusing to communicate. Fu Ciyan's expression changed several times, but in the end he didn't say anything. Women during their menstrual period are often irritable, and as a man, he has to be more tolerant. Wen Nanxi listened to the sounds of washing coming from the bathroom and hugged herself tightly. She was really angry and didn't want to care about Fu Ciyan anymore. Just as he was about to fall asleep, the body beside him collapsed slightly and Fu Ciyan got on the bed. Wen Nanxi ignored him, but found that the man next to her reached out and she fell into his warm arms. The big hands habitually rested on her lower abdomen to relieve her physical discomfort. Wen Nanxi wanted to break free, but felt it was too deliberate, so she just enjoyed it. If you don't like Sister Yu, I can replace her. Fu Ciyan's low voice sounded, but Wen Nanxi ignored him and continued to talk to himself. I have arranged a new driver for you. Don't always call online ride-hailing cars. It's not safe. Wen Nanxi's originally dead heart suddenly moved again. It's not that she doesn't have a driver's license, but she had 3 car accidents on the road. Fu Ciyan was worried that something might happen to her, so he revoked her driver's license and arranged a driver for her. But the driver was the same kind of person as Mrs. Yu. At first, when she and Fu Ciyan were on good terms, everything was fine. But since the Cold War started, the driver had been giving her a hard time, both openly and covertly. So she stopped hiring a driver and always took a taxi when she went out. Wen Nanxi suddenly wanted to ask Fu Ciyan whether he had ever loved her. But before she could speak, the person next to her whispered, I've called the old Chinese doctor. Remember to see him in a few days. I have to go on a business trip. You can ask Jiao to accompany you. She's also quite familiar with the doctor. At this moment, Wen Nanxi didn't want to ask anymore. All the good things he showed her were things he had given to other people. Maybe Fu Ciyan once loved her, but the hurt he caused her was not fake. Not to mention that he casually abandoned her on the roadside, suspended her without any reason, and his preference for Ji Jiao, and the cold stares she received. That 1-year-long Cold War alone was enough to wear away all her love. I won't ask any more. We will be separated sooner or later anyway. When Fu Ciyan left the next day, when Nanxi was still asleep, breathing evenly, her face rosy, looking exceptionally pure. He lowered his head and gave her a gentle kiss before changing his clothes and going out. When Nanxi was awakened by Fu Ciyan's call. It was almost 9 o'clock when she packed up and went downstairs. When you saw her coming out, she was unusually attentive. Madam, you're awake. I made your favorite seafood porridge today. I'll serve it to you. No, I'm going out to eat. When Nanxi was not impressed by this kind of flattering behavior. She dragged her suitcase out of the door and Fu Ciyan was already waiting for her at the door. Let's go on vacation. The place they chose was a small coastal town. It was not cold at this season, and the scenery was pleasant with a gentle sea breeze, which was very suitable for Wen Nanxi, who was afraid of the cold. The 2-hour flight was not tiring. When Nanxi and Fu Ciyan changed into holiday dresses and walked on the waves on the beach, which seemed to wash away all their fatigue. Yang, wearing flowery shorts and a straw hat on his head, leaned against a rock and glanced at Shen Yuchuan. I heard that you are going to take annual leave. Is Dinshan really mad? The Shen family is a medical family with generations practicing medicine. Although Shen Yuchuan is only 30 years old, he has superb medical skills and has studied both Western and Chinese medicine in depth, so he is highly respected. He is usually busy like a top, so it is more difficult for Yang to make an appointment with him than to meet Wen Nanxi. Shen Yuchuan looked at the two people in front of him who were playing in the water and taking pictures, and said casually, "He's not dead. He's in good health." He Yang gave a thumbs up. "He is a filial son." Shen Yuchuan said, "Nanxi's health is not very good. As her brother, you don't know how to pay more attention to her." He Yang snorted coldly, "It's all because of Fu Ciyan that I met such a bad husband. Dr. Shen, you are good at medicine, can you cure my love brain?" Shen Yuchuan, "I'm not very good at brain science." Yang, come over here and take a picture for us." When Nanxi's voice came from afar, He Yang responded and ran over to serve as his sister's mobile phone holder. Kyoto, evening. Yu Zhao took the schedule and went into the CEO's office. "Mr. Fu, the partner has been postponing it for 2 days. It will be too late if we don't go there now." Fu Ciyan rubbed his temple. "Stay one last night and book the earliest flight tomorrow." When Nanxi's menstrual period lasts for a week, and she feels uncomfortable for the first 3 days. Even though they were arguing, he still wanted to stay with her. Thinking of this, he lost interest in work and left work directly without even waiting for Ji Jiaojiao. But when he got home, he didn't see Wen Nanxi. Mrs. Yu wiped her hands on her apron and said, "My wife left early this morning, sir. The dishes I cooked today are all my wife's favorites, without cilantro. When will my wife be back?" Fu Ciyan frowned, "Leaving so early in the morning." He opened his phone and happened to see Wen Nanxi's circle of friends. She smiled like a flower and made a scissors sign to the camera. Behind her were the lazy He Yang and the flamboyant Xie Tian. "Wen Nanxi, you are so nice." Chapter 20. I'm tired of you. You're not as good as Ji Jiaojiao. After leaving the beach, Wen Nanxi and her group went to a small island. The seafood here is famous for its deliciousness. On the return boat, she looked up at the pure night sky. The stars are twinkling, so beautiful. Wen Nanxi hasn't traveled for a long time. The last time was during her honeymoon with Fu Ciyan. They had been married for half a year at that time and their love was at its peak. Fu Ciyan worked non-stop for a month and only managed to squeeze out half a month to accompany her on her honeymoon. They went to Iceland, saw the colorful northern lights, experienced different customs and cultures, and then went to Europe, where they healed her traumatic past in this paradise. At that time, Fu Ciyan took very good care of her. She had never even tied her shoelaces by herself. When they were in love, she didn't even need to take a bath. Who would have thought that the spoiled President Fu could be so caring? She was embarrassed at first, but Fu Ciyan said, "I'm your husband, and I should take care of you." For the first time, when Nanxi tasted a hint of sweetness in the word husband. Fu Ciyan is an ascetic man who is always meticulous when he is outside. Although he is not very old, he has a reliable and steady manner. But in front of Wen Nanxi, he is a complete pervert. Bedroom, living room, kitchen, shower room, dressing room. Their traces are left in every corner. Sometimes she would act like a spoiled brat and hug the quilt and say she was tired. But every time, Fu Ciyan would coax her and tease her until she turned into a puddle of water. Wen Nanxi felt a little nostalgic. At that time, Ji Jiaojiao was not yet between her and Fu Ciyan. She didn't know how cruel Fu Ciyan could be when he became cold and heartless. There is only such pure and passionate love. Whenever she thought of them, she felt that those beautiful days seemed to exist only in dreams. During those 2 years, when Nanxi asked Fu Ciyan more than once why he was so nice to her. Because she doesn't believe she will be loved. She lost her mother when she was 8 years old. She didn't have the chance to see her mother for the last time. She only heard that her mother didn't look good when she was dying. Her grandmother had told her more than once that her mother was killed by her and that she was a disaster. She was young and didn't know how to distinguish right from wrong, so she foolishly believed it and always thought that she was the one who killed her mother. Her father was indifferent and her stepmother was in charge. She had to live under the care of others at a young age. After countless oppressions, she became more and more sensitive and inferior. She built a high wall and closed her heart. She never loved anyone and never accepted love from others. It was Fu Ciyan who melted her with his heart and made flowers bloom in the barren land. Facing her question, Fu Ciyan looked her straight in the eyes and told her, "Because you deserve all the good things in this world. Wen Nanxi is the best person in this world." It was also from that moment that Wen Nanxi completely let down all his guard. She loved Fu Ciyan sincerely and passionately, and gave herself to him wholeheartedly. It's a pity that people's hearts are fickle. She still remembered that it was a sunny afternoon and people felt lazy in the sun. At that time, she had been spoiled by Fu Ciyan day after day for 2 years, and she was very pampered. Because she wanted to design a piece of jewelry, she remembered that there was a related book in Fu Ciyan's study, so she went to his study, stepped on a stool to reach the book on the bookshelf, and accidentally knocked over a ceramic cup beside her. The cup broke, she was startled and got a small cut on her hand. When she turned around, Fu Ciyan was standing at the door. She stretched out her hand pitifully, seeking comfort. But he just looked at her deeply without saying a word. From that day on, Fu Ciyan seemed to have become a different person. He no longer coaxed her, and his expression was no longer good. Except for being as passionate in bed as ever. Later she found out that the ceramic cup was made by Ji Jiaojiao herself. She should never, ever, break the cup of Fu Ciyan's beloved. After returning to their hotel, when Nanxi turned on the light, but was shocked. She was surprised to see the man sitting on the sofa. "Why are you here?" Fu Ciyan crossed his long legs, his head slightly lowered, his hair hanging lazily on his forehead. He turned his head when he heard the voice, and when he looked carefully, there were still some red bloodshot in his eyes. "Did you have fun?" When Nanxi frowned slightly, always feeling that there was something else behind his words. "I'm very happy. Happier than at home," Fu Ciyan said sarcastically. "Are you so happy with him? Don't forget that you are still Mrs. Fu. Do your duty well." When Nanxi took off her bag and hung it aside, no longer looking at him. "I don't know what you're talking about." When Nanxi, do you still have any shame?" Such sharp and harsh words made when Nanxi slightly stunned. She turned her head to look over, but she only saw a face full of sarcasm, with contempt and disgust, but no love. A throbbing pain came from her heart, and she fought back with the same sharp attitude. "What do you mean? Are you qualified to say that to me?" When Nanxi couldn't remember how long it had been since the two of them had a good talk. They always quarreled every time they met. She felt a little tired. Fu Ciyan suddenly approached her and trapped her against the wall. "When Nanxi, are you so anxious to find another partner? We haven't even divorced yet." The person in front of him was tense all over, and when Nanxi was forced to look up and look at him. It was a danger that could not be ignored, and it made her panic for no reason. "Whether I find another employer or not is none of your business, Fu Ciyan. We are about to get divorced, so please be careful." Bang. Fu Ciyan punched the wall, ignoring the wound on his fist, and kissed when Nanxi's lips forcefully, attacking without restraint, venting his anger. When Nanxi widened her eyes and subconsciously reached out to push him, but the man in front of her pressed his hands on the wall above her head, pried open her lips and teeth without a care, and ignited her body. In 3 years, Fu Ciyan was familiar with every sensitive spot on Wen Nanxi's body. The temperature in the air gradually rose, and when Nanxi was forced to raise his head, waves of numbness came from his body, and a feeling of humiliation suddenly surged in his heart. She could never resist this body. It was like she could never control her heartbeat. As the world was spinning, Fu Ciyan picked up Wen Nanxi, walked a few steps into the bedroom, and pressed the tender body onto the bed. When Nanxi woke up in an instant and struggled frantically. "Fu Ciyan, are you crazy? Let me go, I'm having my period, you can't force me." Fu Ciyan stopped moving for a moment. "You think I'll force you?" When Nanxi seized the opportunity to escape from under him, tightly wrapped her clothes and huddled in the corner, her eyes red and full of defensiveness. Fu Ciyan felt like his heart was stabbed. "When Nanxi, you don't believe me." When Nanxi turned her head away from him and said in a nasal voice, "Go away, I don't want to see you." "Oh." A slightly sarcastic laugh sounded, and Fu Ciyan stood up and straightened his clothes. "What do you have that's worthy of me forcing you? Don't be so self-indulgent, Wen Nanxi. It's been 3 years. I'm tired of you. You're not as good as Jiao Jiao." Chapter 21 Brother, I want a divorce. At this moment, when Nanxi's brain went blank, and Fu Ciyan's words echoed in his mind. He said he was tired of. He said she was not as good as Ji Jiao Jiao. A strong sense of humiliation tore at her. When Nanxi opened her mouth, she wanted to ask Fu Ciyan why he treated her like this, but she couldn't make a sound. She watched the figure turn around and leave. What did she do wrong to deserve such humiliation? Tears rolled down her eyes and her self-esteem was shattered. When Nanxi stared blankly ahead with empty eyes, the past passing before his eyes like a kaleidoscope. Good, bad, happy, sad. A heart feels like it's being tortured, with the sharp knife cutting into it piece by piece, pulling out the past along with flesh and blood, making it too bloody to look at. That love was clearly still burning, but it burned away all her rationality. But she wasn't the one who fell in love first, so why did she fall in love while Fu Ciyan got bored? Since you thought she was no match for Ji Jiaojiao, why did you come to provoke her in the first place? When the door closed, when Nanxi could no longer control herself, she buried her head in her knees and burst into tears. She didn't know how to heal herself. The empty room was filled with crying. She cried until she was out of breath. Those hurtful words were like magic sand piercing her ears, lingering in her mind, and she couldn't forget them. She didn't know how she got through the night. She fell asleep, woke up crying, and fell asleep again when she was tired. She fell asleep and woke up again, suffering in a state of half sleep and half wakefulness. The dream is full of tenderness and love, but when I wake up I feel freezing coldness and indifference. Dreams and reality cannot be distinguished, and the soul falls into the abyss. Bao, how are you? Arian, Dr. Shen. When he opened his eyes again, when Nanxi saw Xie Qian's anxious face. Why did you make yourself so haggard? What happened? I was scared to death. Xie Qian's face was full of heartache. He grabbed her hand and placed it on his face. The warm touch touched them, and when Nanxi's dead eyes became a little brighter. She opened her mouth and realized her throat was sore, her lips were cracked, and she was still receiving an in her other hand. Xie, you say, am I really not worthy of being loved? Xie Qian is in a hurry. No, whoever said that, I'll beat him to death. Fu Ciyan came to see you. Yang came over with a glass of water. He was always carefree, but now his eyes were full of gloom. When Nanxi's eyes suddenly became dazed, Yang handed the cup of water to Xie Qian and turned away without saying a word. He was now going to beat up the stinky man who bullied his sister. Elder brother. Yang turned around and felt distressed when he saw the haggard Nanxi. She seldom called him brother, but this time, his heart was broken. Yang knew what Nanxi meant. She didn't want to go find Fu Ciyan. He walked back to the bed, touched her head, and said softly, "My brother is here." When Nanxi's voice was hoarse, he closed his eyes, and a tear rolled down from the corner of his eye. "I want a divorce." Yang's heart was filled with bitterness, and he stroked her hair gently. "Okay, I support you in whatever you want to do. Go to sleep. We will always be with you." When Nanxi's tired body finally relaxed at this moment, Shen Yuchuan returned to the ward, walking lightly, holding the medicine he had just picked up from the pharmacy. Seeing that Nanxi was still asleep, she frowned slightly, looked at Xie Qian and Yang, and lowered her voice. "You're still awake." Xie Qian put her hands under the quilt and responded, "I just woke up and fell asleep again." Shen Yuchuan breathed a sigh of relief and tested the temperature on her forehead again. "Her fever has gone down, so she should be fine. Let's go out first and don't disturb her rest." Xie Qian refused to leave and insisted on staying with Nanxi. Yang and Shen Yuchuan walked to the door of the ward and waited. Shen Yuchuan blamed himself a little. "We played a little late yesterday. We were tired and the wind blew. It's easy to catch a cold. We should have come back earlier to rest." Yang's face was gloomy. "It's not your fault, it's because something dirty came in last night." "You mean Fu Ciyan?" Yang nodded. "I will go and cause trouble for Xiao Nanxi after she gets divorced. I can't let her be caught in the middle." Although Yang said this, Shen Yuchuan still felt a little guilty and secretly planned to take good care of Nanxi after returning to Kyoto. The two of them estimated the time and returned to the ward. Shen Yuchuan carefully removed the needle from Nanxi, and only then did she slowly wake up. "After sleeping, I felt more energetic." Xie Qian knew that Nanxi didn't like the atmosphere in the hospital, so they went back to their hotel together. This time she was worried about Nanxi living alone. God knows how panicked she was when she knocked on the door in the morning and no one opened it. Xie Qian was busy all the time, taking care of Nanxi as if she were a seriously ill patient. Nanxi was helpless. "I just have a cold. My fever has gone down. I'm not in the ICU." Bar, don't talk nonsense. Xie Qian prepared the medicine and water and watched her take them. It was hard to hide his heartache when he saw her haggard face. Baby Tilda, you are the best girl in the world and deserve the best love. Don't belittle yourself, okay? Fu Ciyan is a cheerful person who dares to love and hate, and rarely coaxes others in such a gentle and soft voice. But such a gentle tone almost made Nanxi cry. Someone once said that she deserves to be loved. But in the end he said that he would never be as good as the other woman. Xia, he doesn't love me, he has never loved me. When Nanxi choked up, and her already red and swollen eyes became misty again. It turns out that a broken heart is so heartbreaking. When Fu Ciyan ignored her, she thought it was because Fu Ciyan was busy. After Ji Jiaojia returned to China, Fu Ciyan showed favoritism to her several times, but she still held on to hope. Only Fu Ciyan's words last night completely shattered her hopes. She had to accept the fact that Fu Ciyan had never loved her. But it hurts, it really hurts. Fu Ciyan held Nanxi in his arms and continued to comfort her until his eyes became sore. They met in the school's photography club when they were in college. Nanxi is very smart, loves photography, and is polite, but after getting to know her, they found it difficult for anyone to get into her heart. It took Fu Ciyan 2 years to become close friends with Nanxi. This was the first time in all these years that she saw Nanxi so vulnerable. The crying was intermittent and heartbreaking. Nanxi finally didn't tell Fu Ciyan what happened last night. She knew Fu Ciyan's character. If she knew what Fu Ciyan said yesterday, she would definitely ask her for an explanation and might even tear Fu Ciyan apart. If things really get out of hand, something bad could easily happen. Fu Ciyan didn't say much. He left the room and made a phone call after seeing that everyone was asleep. As soon as the call was connected, Fu Ciyan immediately started to output. Fu Ciyan, what evil did Nanxi do in her previous life to deserve such a scumbag like you in this life? Do you have to kill her to be happy? Chapter 22 Fu Ciyan, let's get divorced. Fu Ciyan, who had just finished a meeting, looked gloomy. He listened to the different scoldings from the other side for 2 minutes before he took the opportunity to speak. What do you think happened to her? Summer is not good. Shameless, don't you know what you did? You still have the nerve to ask her what happened. She cried all night and had a fever and was admitted to the hospital. Are you satisfied? After Fu Ciyan finished cursing, he immediately hung up the phone and took several deep breaths outside before he calmed down. On the other side, Fu Ciyan's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He searched the address book and called Nanxi. He himself didn't even notice that his fingertips were trembling slightly. He regretted what he said yesterday, but thinking that Nanxi was still angry, he wanted to wait until she calmed down before talking to her clearly. But he didn't expect to receive such news. The phone rang several times before it was connected. He spoke anxiously. Nanxi, how are you? There was silence for a while. Fu Ciyan wanted to continue asking questions when he heard a hoarse voice from the other end. Fu Ciyan, let's get divorced. Fu Ciyan's face was grim. Stop making trouble, are you sick? Nanxi pulled the corners of his mouth forcefully. Although the fever was gone, his throat still hurt. She had no idea how many times she had heard the words, stop making trouble. She would have been angry and sad before, but now she felt surprisingly calm. Maybe it's because I had no expectations. I'm not making a fuss, Fu Ciyan, please sign the agreement when it's convenient for you. I'm ready. Fu Ciyan was filled with anger, and his usually stable emotions were showing signs of exploding. Nanxi, are you so anxious to leave me? What, is that person outside of yours unable to wait any longer? Whatever you think. Nanxi suddenly felt that the two of them could no longer communicate. She felt so exhausted that she hung up the phone. Before Fu Ciyan could finish his words, he heard a busy tone. His face froze and he almost dropped his phone. Yu Zhao, postpone the next meeting. Yu Zhao understood. Okay, Mr. Fu, it has been postponed to 2 p.m., Xiao Li is already downstairs. Fu Ciyan glanced at Yu Zhao with some surprise, but the latter remained calm. To be exact, from the moment the boss called his wife, he had already notified Xiao Li to pick someone up. A qualified special assistant must have a sufficient understanding of the president's psychology. Nanxi shrank back into the quilt, like a snail retracting into its shell, hiding in the safest place. After Fu Ciyan finished the call, he did not return to the room, but went to call a few security guards. Prevent fire, theft and banquets. We must not give any chance to the stinky scumbag. Lunch was the health-preserving porridge brought by Shen Yuchuan. It was light and nourishing, and very much to Nanxi's liking. As Xie Qian expected, Fu Ciyan arrived in less than 2 hours and was stopped by security guards at the door. Hearing the noise at the door, Xie Qian leaned against the door with his arms folded. "Oh my, who is this? Isn't this President Fu? Why is he here when he's not busy accompanying his mistress?" Fu Ciyan ignored her sarcasm and said coldly, "Where's Nanxi?" Xie Qian chuckled. "Why are you calling Nanxi? What are you doing here? Divorce. Make way for your lover's sister." Xie Qian didn't know what had happened between Fu Ciyan and Nanxi, but she guessed that it must have something to do with that little green tea girl. Fu Ciyan clenched his fists. He knew that Nanxi always protected Xie Qian and didn't want to conflict with her. He took a deep breath and suppressed his emotions. "She's sick, and I'm her husband. Is it okay for me to come and see her? I get angry when I talk about this summer, and I put my hands on my hips and start typing. Don't you have any idea who caused her illness? How many times has Nanxi been sick because of you? She was forced to get married, and you promised to marry her yourself. Now that your white moonlight is back, you treat her like this. Is it her fault? Do you have a conscience?" Fu Ciyan pursed his lips, his face dark. "Let me see her, or don't blame me for taking action." "Hey! You're still being awesome." Xie Qian rolled up his sleeves and said, "If you have the guts, do it. Beat me to death. Xie, please let him in." Nanxi's voice came from the bedroom. Xie Qian had no choice but to glare at Fu Ciyan and move away from the door. In summer, this room is a suite. The living room is at the entrance. Fu Ciyan took a few quick steps before reaching the bedroom. Nanxi sat leaning against the head of the bed, her eyes still swollen and her face looking haggard. Fu Ciyan's eyes darkened for a moment. He sat next to her and wanted to hold her hand, but Nanxi dodged him. "Why are you sick? You were fine yesterday." Nanxi did not answer and picked up the divorce agreement on the bedside table. "I have already signed it. Everything is in accordance with the prenuptial agreement. If there is no problem, just sign it. We will go through the formalities when we return to Kyoto." Her voice was soft, but it sounded heavy to Fu Ciyan's ears. He didn't expect Nanxi to be so well prepared. He felt tormented and his eyes fell on her fingertips holding the divorce agreement. "It's not even the day yet, why are you in such a hurry? What you said yesterday." Nanxi didn't want to recall what she said yesterday. The wound had finally healed, so why bother to open it again and make her feel pain again? She interrupted Fu Ciyan. "What difference does it make if it's 1 day earlier or later?" "Fu Ciyan, I'm tired." "Yes, the difference is huge. We agreed on 3 years, so it's 3 years. Miss Wen, you won't break the contract, will you? Cooperation should always have a spirit of contract." Nanxi's fingertips curled slightly. After a moment of silence, she responded softly. "Okay, take the agreement first, so you don't have to make a second copy. When the date comes, we'll go directly to the Civil Affairs Bureau. It won't be long anyway, just over a month." Fu Ciyan took the divorce agreement and flipped through it, his face grumpy and his voice full of disdain. "What kind of agreement is this? The format is not right. You did this? Aren't you a top student from Kyoto University? Is this all you can do?" Nanxi looked at the face that was exactly the same as in his memory. Why could such a gentle and gentlemanly person say such harsh words? "Mr. Fu, are you just nitpicking? If you are not satisfied with my ability, you can just fire me. There is no need to humiliate me." Fu Ciyan's breathing stagnated, and an indescribable feeling lingered in his heart. Nanxi is now like a hedgehog. He will be pricked if he is touched. "I'll have Yu Zhao redo the agreement. You can take a rest." He left the room, and Xie Qian was still leaning against the door, staring at him warily. Fu Ciyan walked away on his own, and Xie Qian called him. "Fu Ciyan, I don't quite understand why you hate Nanxi so much. She has always been so good to you. Can't we just part ways amicably? Why do you have to hurt her?" Fu Ciyan turned around and asked, "Who said I hate her?" Xie Qian snorted coldly. "You don't hate her? Then you asked someone to force Nanxi to drink so much that she had stomach bleeding and fainted in the hospital. What were you doing?" Chapter 23. She likes photography. Gastric bleeding? What did you say? Fu Ciyan's eyes flashed as he stared at Fu Ciyan. Fu Ciyan rolled his eyes unceremoniously. Don't pretend. Don't you know that Nanxi has had chronic gastritis for a long time? She had just finished a gastroscopy the day before, and you had someone force her to drink. She passed out in the middle of the night, but what were you doing? You were picking up your white moonlight jiao to return home, and you were having fun in the bar. The nails dug into the palm of his hand almost instantly, and Fu Ciyan realized what he had overlooked. She had clearly asked me for help. That day she said she was not feeling well. But what did he do? He forced Nanxi to drink those 2 glasses of red wine. He turned around suddenly, but was stopped by security guards. Fu Ciyan, I don't know what happened between you and Nanxi last night, but she cried all night and now she needs to rest. Cried all night. Fu Ciyan's fingertips trembled slightly, and his face looked anxious. Let me go see her. Fu Ciyan thought he looked ridiculous. She wanted to scold him but was afraid of disturbing Nanxi's rest. She has been watching what Nanxi has experienced along the way. It's really not worth it to be hurt because of a scumbag. Fu Ciyan, if you really want to do this for her own good, then don't bother her. It's your business if you love Ji Jiao, but Nanxi got into Aurora customization on her own. It's unfair to suspend her without any reason. She sighed and continued. In fact, Nanxi has never liked jewelry design. Her dream is photography. She stayed because of you. When Nanxi's stepmother was always worried that she would secretly learn business knowledge and compete with her son for the family property, so she forced her to choose design as her major. When she graduated, she wanted to open a photography studio, but her stepmother was worried that she was doing something behind her back, so she had no choice but to go to Aurora customization. After getting married, she always wanted to quit her job, but at that time her relationship with Fu Ciyan was getting better and better, and Aurora customization was closer to Fu Ciyan, so she gave up. Fu Ciyan's mind exploded. He remembered this incident happening before. When Nanxi said she wanted to open a photography studio, but he didn't take it seriously. The two of them were in a good relationship at the time, and he even asked Nanxi why she didn't want to work at Aurora anymore. Did she not want to work with her? It seems that since then, Nanxi never mentioned opening a photography studio again. Fu Ciyan knew that Fu Ciyan would not let him in today, so he had to turn around and leave. Back in the car, Yu Zhao sat in the passenger seat while Xiao Li stepped on the accelerator and drove towards the branch office. Yu Zhao, help me make a business plan for a photography studio. Yu Zhao was stunned and quickly agreed. Why is the CEO interested in photography? Is he changing his career? When Fu Ciyan returned to the room, Nanxi was in a daze, looking into the distance, and no one knew what he was thinking about. Fu Ciyan sat down next to her. What are you thinking, baby? Just dump him. I have a lot of handsome young men who just debuted under my command. Take a look at this one. Fu Ciyan took out his phone and found the videos of the young people in the company and showed them to Nanxi. This one, 181 centimeters tall, has six-pack abs. I've touched it. This guy is a tough guy with great strength. He looks like a human pile driver. This is a cute little puppy. He's sweet and well-behaved. He calls me Sister Z. He's super well-behaved. Nanxi's mouth twitched. Are you a broker or a madam? Fu Ciyan coughed twice. Oh, they are all the same. I tell you, this kind of little boy is the best at pleasing others. His emotional value is maxed out. Is it pleasing? In fact, if Fu Ciyan is willing, he can be quite good at trying to please others. At least in those 2 years, she never got angry once. Every time she was a little unhappy, Fu Ciyan could sense it and then coax her. It's a pity that such sweet days will never come again. After resting for 2 days, perhaps because he had come to his senses, Nanxi's health also improved, so they went to the local ancient town together. It had just rained a little, and the air was misty. The red bricks and green tiles had faded a little, and the eaves were curled upwards. There were black-sailed boats sailing on the creek, which looked ancient and particularly beautiful. Some small vendors were still hawking their wares here. Yan put his hands in his pockets, followed the 2 girls, and bought 2 candid whores. Call me brother and I'll give you food. Fu Ciyan put her hands on her hips and said, call me sister, and I'll do you the honor of eating your candid whores. Yan raised his eyebrows, don't want to eat? Then I'll feed the dog. The next second, he stuffed the candid horse into Fu Ciyan's hand. Summer? Good job, Yang. The two of them were making a mess, and Wen Nanxi covered her mouth and laughed. Shen Yuquan handed the candid horse in his hand to Wen Nanxi. Eat less. You have a bad stomach. You can't eat too much hawthorn. Wen Nanxi whispered thank you and took a bite of the candid horse. The sweet and sour taste melted on the tip of her tongue, making her squint her eyes. She was wearing a green cheongsam today, her long hair was tied up with an exquisite jade hairpin, her eyebrows were lowered, and a few strands of hair floated in front of her forehead, adding a sense of casualness. In the mist and rain, the beauty was like a painting, and Shen Yuquan was looking at her in fascination. Sister Nanxi, you are playing here too. When Nanxi frowned slightly. Why is Ji Jiao here? Unlucky. Looking over, Ji Jiao was also wearing a cheongsam, a warm orange-red color, with two buns on her head, looking bright and sunny. Shen Yuquan saw Ji Jiao approaching and turned his head slightly. Is this your friend? When Nanxi lifted the hair beside her ear and said casually. This is Fu Ciyan's sister. Shen Yuquan narrowed his eyes slightly and noticed the changes in Wen Nanxi. The matter between Fu Ciyan and his sister had caused a lot of controversy before, so of course he knew about it. Ji Jiao didn't get a response, but she wasn't angry. She smiled and said, Sister Nanxi, why are you ignoring me? You are wearing a cheongsam too. Brother Yang used to like to see me wearing a cheongsam the most. When Nanxi's eyes darkened. Her mother likes cheongsams, so she likes them too. She studied design in college and most of her cheongsams are designed by herself. Fu Ciyan also praised her for looking good in cheongsam. It turns out that he was looking at others through himself at that time. Then go find your brother Yang. I have something else to do. Shen Yuquan stood behind her, speaking in a gentle voice. Let's go, there's a tea house up ahead that tastes pretty good, let's go try it. A trace of jealousy flashed in Ji Jiao's eyes, and she raised her voice. Sister Nanxi, who is this person? Is he your boyfriend? When Nanxi paused. Ji Jiao, do you really want me to cheat on your brother? Ji Jiao's words also attracted the attention of Fu Ciyan and He Yang. Fu Ciyan saw Ji Jiao, and she protected Wen Nanxi behind her like a hen protecting her chicks. Are you sick? If you are, go see a doctor. You are really a person whose face has disappeared and whose brain is still soaked in water. Who are you disgusted by? Ji Jiao's eyes instantly turned red after being scolded by Fu Ciyan, and she spoke aggrievedly. Brother Yang, she scolded me, I just wanted to say a few words to Sister Nanxi. Chapter 24. If you could apologize earlier. When Nanxi didn't turn her head, but she felt the gaze on her back. Why, do you want to seek an explanation for your good sister? Fu Ciyan was always sarcastic and couldn't stand Fu Ciyan's biased look. Fu Ciyan ignored Ji Jiao, and did not respond to Fu Ciyan, but looked at Wen Nanxi steadily. Nanxi, let's talk. He Yang sneered, Boss Fu, why are you so persistent in pursuing me? If you want to pursue me, then you should do it. But why do you bring another woman with you? How can you be so embarrassed? Fu Ciyan's expression turned cold, and he clenched his fists at his side. Just a quarter of an hour. When Nanxi knew Fu Ciyan very well and knew that if she didn't agree today, he would probably not let it go. Besides, the two of them still had divorce to discuss, so they just talked about it. So he nodded and walked aside on his own initiative. Ji Jiao bit her lower lip and stared at the backs of the two men, jealousy almost dripping from her eyes. This can't go on any longer. What do you want to talk about? When Nanxi's voice was lukewarm. He looked towards the end of the old street and gave Fu Ciyan a cold glance. Fu Ciyan lowered her head slightly. She seemed to have lost some weight recently. Her waist was as slender as a willow. She was wearing a green cheongsam, which made her look like a blue and white porcelain vase. Her beauty seemed to be quite distant. The cheongsam is actually very figure-testing, but it fits her perfectly, with a straight back and a beautiful posture, and a white swan neck, which is cool and attractive. He looked for a while, and thinking of He Yang's protection of her just now, he felt jealous and forgot to speak for a moment. When Nanxi felt a little uncomfortable being stared at. If you don't want to talk, I'll leave first. Fu Ciyan then spoke. I shouldn't have forced you to drink that day. I didn't know you had a gastroscopy. I'm sorry. It's my fault. When Nanxi recalled and realized that he was probably talking about the time when Mr. Lin forced him to drink. Fu Ciyan, whether I have had a gastroscopy or not, you shouldn't allow others to force me to drink. Fu Ciyan lowered his eyes, his voice a little muffled. You're right, I am a jerk. He shouldn't have done something to hurt her because of that shameful jealousy. He wasn't even worthy of her forgiveness. When Nanxi's eyes felt a little sore. Sometimes the wound may appear to have scabbed over on the surface, but it is still painful inside. If you had apologized earlier, I might have been very happy. Fu Ciyan looked at Wen Nanxi deeply. It's not too late now, we still have time. Wen Nanxi shook his head and took a deep breath. It's too late. I don't want this apology anymore. Fu Ciyan, don't worry. I will keep my promise. Fu Ciyan did not respond, but said, Aurora's position has been restored to you, and I will promote you to deputy director later. When Nanxi looked at him puzzledly. Is this compensation? Fu Ciyan, with your ability, it's only a matter of time before you become deputy director. Oh. When Nanxi found that she couldn't understand Fu Ciyan's thoughts. If it is calculated based on ability, then she should not be suspended. If it's compensation, she doesn't need it. I will go back to the company. The time is up and I will go back. She must return to the company and submit her resignation application. I stayed before because of Fu Ciyan, but there is no need now. He Yang and Shen Yuchuan kept an eye on their movements, fearing that Wen Nanxi would be bullied. Fu Ciyan was arguing with Ji Jiaojiao, who was extremely angry, but Fu Ciyan was not far away. She could not affect her innocent little white rabbit character, nor did she dare to say anything excessive. Seeing Fu Ciyan turned around, she immediately bowed to Fu Ciyan and Wen Nanxi and apologized in a tearful voice. I'm sorry, Sister Nanxi. I just saw you being too close to another man, so I stood up for my brother. I misunderstood. I apologize. Fu Ciyan saw that she was indignant just now, but now her expression changed again and she sneered. Ms. Ji Jiaojiao, you are quite good at acting. Do you want to come and film a movie? You are such a good actress. I guarantee you will become famous. Ji Jiaojiao's eyes were red, as if she was frightened. She jumped behind Fu Ciyan, grabbed the corner of his clothes, and said carefully, Brother Yang, I've already apologized. Fu Ciyan was still staring at Wen Nanxi, but Wen Nanxi didn't even look at him. Instead, she took Fu Ciyan's arm. Come on, let's go have some tea. He Yang rolled his eyes and followed him, but Shen Yuchuan did not leave immediately. Instead, he looked at Fu Ciyan and said, Mr. Fu should take good care of his sister. Talking nonsense will offend people. Shen Yuchuan was born in the Shen family of Kyoto. In terms of family background, his family was no worse than the Fu family. However, the two families were involved in different industries and usually had no contact with each other. This was the first time he had targeted someone like this. Fu Ciyan sensed the hidden atmosphere in this and replied in a cold voice. I will take good care of Jiao Jiao, and I hope Dr. Shen can take good care of himself. Seeing the people walking away, Ji Jiaojiao bit her lower lip and apologized to Fu Ciyan. I'm sorry, Brother Yang. When I get back, I will apologize to Sister Nanxi and ask her not to be angry anymore. Facing this sister whom he had loved for so many years, Fu Ciyan had complicated emotions. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded lightly and left. Ji Jiaojiao breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she was not suspected. As soon as they arrived at the tea house, Fu Ciyan asked what Fu Ciyan had just said. There was nothing to hide, so when Nanxi told him everything. Apologize to you? And give you a promotion? You're not going to make a big fuss about it. After listening to this, Shen Yuchuan frowned. So you were hospitalized for gastric bleeding that day because Fu Ciyan forced you to drink. When Nanxi, strictly speaking, it should be that he allowed others to force me to drink, but it's almost the same. Shen Yuchuan's face darkened. What era is this? Don't you know that it is illegal to persuade others to drink? He is still your legal husband, but he can do such a thing. He Yang drank a cup of tea and snorted coldly. Humans can't do it, but animals can. He has disliked his brother-in-law for a long time. If when Nanxi hadn't stopped him, his fist would have landed on Fu Ciyan's face long ago. When Nanxi felt warm in her heart. It felt good to have someone speaking for her. Fu Ciyan grasped the key point and asked. So what do you want to do next, go back to work? When Nanxi shook his head. We're getting divorced, so there's no need for me to stay at Aurora Customization. I'll resign when I go back this time. Bai Yueguang's eyes moved slightly, and he picked up the teacup. The mist covered his thoughts. At the end of the weekend, the group returned to Kyoto. When Nanxi returned to Fenglinyuan first. Fu Ciyan did not return all night, and she was too lazy to ask, so she went to work on time the next day. I used to be quite familiar with my colleagues in the design department, but when I came back this time, when Nanxi keenly noticed that something was wrong with the atmosphere. No one spoke to her. Everyone kept their heads down and worked, as if they were avoiding her. When Nanxi was confused, but didn't want to care about it, so she went straight to Lisa's office. Lisa looked at the resignation letter submitted by Wen Nanxi and said in surprise. You want to resign? Chapter 25. You are a mistress. Nanxi, I won't hide it from you. The news from the Human Resources Department has come down. You will be promoted to Deputy Director by the end of the year, and your salary will be not much different from mine. Wen Nanxi didn't expect Fu Ciyan to be so fast. But she no longer wanted to have anything to do with Fu Ciyan. What's more, there is Ji Jiaojiao. Sister Lisa, you know I can't do this with Ji Jiaojiao around. It's a pity for Lisa, she values talent very much. Such a good seedling, capable and willing to work hard, she really didn't want to let go, and continued to persuade. Nanxi, if I'm right, Ji Jiaojiao is just here to gild her reputation. She won't be here for long. Her designs are not as good as those of the interns in the department. You don't have to let her ruin your future. When Nanxi knew that Lisa was doing this for her own good, but she still shook her head. Sister Lisa, I understand, but I have thought it through during this period. I know what my future path should be, and I will do a good job of handing over my resignation. Lisa saw her determined look and knew that she couldn't persuade her, but she still didn't give up. At least work until the end of the year and get your year-end bonus. Don't be stingy with money. By the way, didn't you want to participate in the Silver Moon Cup design competition? It just so happens that our Aurora Customization was invited, and I wanted you to go. Silver Moon Cup design competition. When Nanxi looked at the exquisite invitation letter and memories came to her mind. This is her regret. The Silver Moon Cup design competition is divided into student group and professional group. She participated in the student group competition when she was a junior. She put in a lot of effort and won first place in both the preliminary and semi-finals. She was the favorite to win the final, but she did not compete that day. Instead, she sat on the rooftop all night and wanted to jump off countless times. Because her design draft was taken away by her stepmother and given to her cousin. There is no reason, no explanation, and no place to appeal. That was the only time she asked her father to help her. She even knelt down and begged with tears, but all she got in return was one sentence: you have to be sensible. Her cousin won the Silver Moon Cup design competition and became famous overnight. And she nearly fell into the abyss. The Silver Moon Cup design competition is held every 4 years, and it has been exactly 4 years since she was in college. In the professional group, only well-known design companies are eligible to receive invitation letters. If she resigns now, she will not be eligible to participate. When Nanxi took a deep breath and took back the resignation application. Sister Lisa, I'll go. Lisa also breathed a sigh of relief. That's right. For people like us who don't have a background, making money is the most important thing. Don't worry about those trivial things. If you can win an award, your salary will be higher if you change jobs after the new year. Although I'm reluctant to let you go, I respect you. When Nanxi felt a little touched. Lisa is a really good leader. Then I'll go back and prepare, Sister Lisa. Lisa nodded and watched her walk to the door. Suddenly she remembered something and called Wen Nanxi. By the way, Nanxi, there have been some bad things said about you in the company recently, you have to be careful. When Nanxi thought about the strange looks from her colleagues and felt more at ease. After opening the office door, those who were peeking out from their workstations lowered their heads again. She walked to her workstation as usual and sorted out her work for the day. As for rumors, she had experienced a lot of them since she was a child. She didn't need to ask about such things proactively because those people couldn't hold it in. Sure enough, within a few minutes, discussions began to rage. Hey, have you heard? Team leader Wen is going to be promoted to deputy director. No way, she's only been here for less than 3 years. TSK, she just relied on men to get to the top, and she even seduced the president. When Nanxi. You can figure out who did it with just your toes. Ji Jiaojiao is also a talented person. Does Fu Ciyan still need her to seduce him? He is like a hungry wolf all day long. I don't know if Ji Jiaojiao's small body can bear it. Thinking of this, when Nanxi was stunned for a moment. Even though she had already said the word divorce, she would still think of Fu Ciyan inadvertently. It seems to have become a habit. Senior, you're back. Xu Yang leaned over and placed a cup of coffee on her desk. Xu Yang came to the company last year, when Nanxi had been guiding her during her internship. When also graduated from Peking University, and the two had always had a good relationship. When Nanxi nodded, "Thank you, I'll treat you to lunch at noon." Xu Yang made an okay gesture. It was not appropriate for her to say too much during working hours. It would be better to save any words for lunch. When Nanxi shook off the unnecessary thoughts. As for those rumors, she didn't intend to pay attention to them. She had to hurry up and prepare the design draft for the preliminary round. The professional group only had the preliminary and final rounds, which was easier than when she was in college. But they are all professionals, so you can imagine how competitive they are. Moreover, the Silver Moon Cup design competition is different from general design competitions. Its preliminary round is about clothing design, and the final round is about jewelry design. Participants are required to be versatile enough to win the championship. The theme this time is traditional Chinese style. After thinking about it, she decided to start with the Cheongsam, which she is good at. She spent the entire morning thinking seriously. As noon approached, Xu Yang saw that she was still working hard and asked her to go eat. "Senior, shall we go to the staff cafeteria or go out to eat?" When Nanxi put down the work in her hands, and before she could say anything, a sarcastic voice rang out. "Xiaoshu, do you think he's willing to pay attention to you? He's the future deputy director Tilder." The person who spoke was the leader of Group 2, Lin Ziyi, Wen Nanxi's mortal enemy. Lin Ziyi and Wen Nanxi joined the company in the same batch. They had similar abilities and were in Group 1 at the time. They had always been at odds with each other. Later, when Nanxi became the leader of Group 1, and she transferred to Group 2. "This is so weird," when Nanxi retorted coldly. "Why, are you jealous?" Lin Ziyi folded his arms, looking superior. "Why should I be jealous of a slut who gets ahead by selling her body?" When Nanxi looked her straight in the eyes, neither humble nor arrogant. "Are you talking about me?" Seeing that the two were so tense, Xu Yang was afraid that they would fight, so he quickly said, "Senior, let's go eat." "Team leader Lin, those are just rumors. I believe you are not that kind of person." Lin Ziyi sneered. Otherwise, how could she, a team leader, be promoted to deputy director so quickly? Who knows what dirty deals she made behind the scenes? "When Nanxi, you said I was promoted to deputy director. Where is the promotion notice? Where is the new position appointment letter? How come I don't know? Also, you said I made a deal, where is the evidence?" Lin Ziyi was stunned by the question. "The HR department has already told me." When Nanxi nodded and pulled Lin Ziyi. "Okay, let's go to the human resources department and ask. I want to know what kind of dirty deal I made. You can testify for me." Lin Ziyi. How dare she spread rumors about the human resources department? "Let me go." When Nanxi, just because you don't admit it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You also seduced President Fu and destroyed the relationship between the president and his fiancée. You are just a mistress. When Nanxi let go of her hand, and said indifferently, "Is this what Ji Jiaojiao told you?" Chapter 26. Don't you understand? I'll carve it on your tombstone later. Needless to say, this is all true, okay? Jiaojiao has been engaged to Mr. Fu for a long time, and you still want to interfere? Do you have the nerve to do that? Lin Ziyi's voice was quite loud. It was lunchtime and it instantly attracted a lot of people's attention. The colleagues who were originally friendly with each other now kept their distance and whispered something. When Nanxi couldn't hear clearly, but she thought it was not good. It seems that Ji Jiaojiao has done a lot of damage to her reputation during the time she was away. When Nanxi curled her lips. "You said that Mr. Fu and Ji Jiaojiao have been engaged for a long time. Then did you know that Mr. Fu got married 3 years ago and it was even reported in financial reports? What? Is Mr. Fu planning to remarry?" As soon as these words were spoken, the whole audience was in an uproar. Mr. Fu is married? Could it be that Ji Jiao is the third one? Now that you mention it, it seems like I have an impression of it. I heard about such an incident 3 years ago. The wedding was quite low-key, but very luxurious. My cousin is a reporter, and she participated in the report at that time. What's the big deal? It's possible that they left long ago. Lin Zai was stunned. She really didn't know that Mr. Fu was married. What did you say? Mr. Fu was married. In fact, few people in the entire Aurora customization knew about Fu Ciyan's marital status. After all, Aurora customization was just a subsidiary, but it was relatively close to the headquarters. If it weren't for Ji Jiao being here, Fu Ciyan would have only come a few times, and the employees of Aurora customization would never have had the chance to meet this legendary president. For a family as wealthy and powerful as the Fu family, things like marriages must be reported. The wedding of Nanxi and Fu Ciyan was also reported in the news. However, Nanxi's information was well protected and not leaked, and the only photos that leaked were a few of her back. For some unknown reason, Fu Ciyan deleted all news related to his marriage. Ordinary people don't pay much attention to financial news, which means that few people know that Fu Ciyan is married now. Nanxi sneered twice. Lin Zai, I remember that you are not stupid, but don't be used as a gun without knowing it. Lin Zai stood there in a daze, while Nanxi took Xu Yang to eat together. Nanxi wanted to know what had happened while he was away, so he chose a restaurant downstairs from the company and ordered a few dishes. Xu Yang's gossipy nature exploded, and he asked with sparkling eyes. Xenia, how do you know that Mr. Fu is married? Nanxi. She is Fu Ciyan's wife, how could she not know that? However, she was about to divorce Fu Ciyan, so it was difficult to talk about this matter. She had to find an excuse. The marital status of shareholders of listed companies must be made public. You can find out by checking. By the way, what happened during the time I was away? Xu Yang curled his lips and started to complain. Don't mention it. Since Ji Jiao came, the whole design department has been in a mess. She has very little ability and likes to change the design draft without permission, which caused us to lose several orders. She is also often late and leaves early, and she often stands up to clients she has scheduled with. If it weren't for her claiming to be Mr. Fu's fiancée, Sister Lisa would have kicked her out long ago. Nanxi asked, did Ji Jiao admit that she is Mr. Fu's fiancée? Xu Yang recalled. That's not the case, but she has a very close relationship with President Fu. When her colleagues asked her about it, she didn't admit it, but she didn't deny it either. I guess she tacitly agreed. Nanxi. Aren't you worried about being slapped in the face when you clarify the matter later? But Fu Ciyan loves her so much, such a thing will never happen. Do you know what the rumors about me are? Speaking of this, Xu Yang was silent for a moment and asked. Actually, those words came from Lin Zai. But during the time you were away, Ji Jiao was always with Lin Zai. She said a lot of bad things about you and even hinted that we should isolate you. Nanxi frowned slightly, I'm sorry, I didn't know about this matter. I think it will be affected if you come out with me today. Workplace bullying is quite cruel. She had planned to quit after participating in the competition, but Xu Yang had only been in the company for a year. She would feel guilty if she lost her job because of her. Xu Yang shook his head indifferently. It's okay. Xenia, you were so nice to me before. If I were to take advantage of you because of something like this, I would look down on myself. Hearing these words, Nanxi was moved. Xenia, did you offend Ji Jiao? Did you apologize to her this time before you got your position reinstated? Hearing this question, Nanxi paused. It's not an offense, but she does dislike me. I originally came back to resign, but the Silver Moon Cup design competition has started, so I'll leave after participating in the competition. She didn't want to have any grudge against Ji Jiao, but Ji Jiao kept causing trouble for her. So you apologized? Looking at Xu Yang's gossipy eyes, Nanxi smiled. No, it was President Fu who came to apologize to me personally and asked me to come back. Xu Yang. Do you think I believe it? Nanxi shrugged, if you don't believe it, forget it. Xu Yang just heard Nanxi say that she was leaving, and felt a little disappointed. Xenia, if you leave, I'll be so lonely. There are 2 spots for the Silver Moon Cup this time. I guess Sister Lisa will give the other spot to Lin Zai. She's really eager to defeat you. When Nanxi lowered her eyes. It doesn't have to be Lin Zai. Lin Zai is indeed very capable, but there is also Ji Jiaojiao who uses a backdoor. After dinner, the two went straight back to the company. Unlike the morning, now the employees were gathered in front of Ji Jiaojiao's workstation, and it was quite lively. Lin Zai glanced at Wen Nanxi and asked loudly. Jiao Jiao, someone said that Mr. Fu is already married. Is this true? Ji Jiaojiao's clear voice came out. That happened a long time ago. Actually, it's already. Hey, you can't discuss this kind of thing, Brother Yang will be unhappy. I was still young at that time and too ignorant to cherish it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have. Fortunately, it's not too late now. Ji Jiaojiao hesitated several times to speak, guiding everyone's thoughts. When Nanxi just wanted to roll her eyes, Ji Jiaojiao, what's the point of saying half of the sentence? Do you dare to say that Fu Ciyan is single now? If you have the guts, say with your own mouth that Fu Ciyan is divorced and is now your fiancé. Ji Jiaojiao was stunned by the rebuke and said, "It is impolite to talk about the leader's private life in private. Sister Nanxi, please stop talking about it." When Nanxi sneered, "Are you scared? You don't dare?" Fu Ciyan's current public marital status is married, but he doesn't have a fiancé, so he's the third party. Seeing Ji Jiaojiao being criticized, Lin Zai quickly spoke up for her. TSK, some people are just jealous. If they can't get what they want, they'll spread rumors that others are mistresses. It turns out that mistresses think everyone is a mistress. When Nanxi smiled and turned back, well, idiots look idiots on everyone. Lin Zai. When Nanxi, what do you mean? When Nanxi, I mean you are an idiot, don't you understand? I will carve your name on my tombstone later. Lin Zai. Chapter 27. But Fu Ciyan refused to listen. Lin Zai was so angry that she was furious. When Nanxi had been at odds with her before, but she had never scolded anyone like this. She pointed at Wen Nanxi's nose and said angrily, "Wen Nanxi, what right do you have to scold me?" When Nanxi glanced at her. "Just because you called me a mistress, you don't allow me to talk back. Lin Zai, you can donate your brain to others if you don't need it." Seeing that Lin Zai couldn't beat Wen Nanxi in scolding her, Ji Jiaojiao stood up. "Sister Nanxi, stop arguing. Team leader Lin is just joking. Don't take it seriously." Oh. When Nanxi didn't want to talk to Ji Jiaojiao, so he turned around, sat at his workstation and started working. Xu Yang secretly gave Wen Nanxi a thumbs up. "Good job, senior sister." Lin Zai wanted to say something, but was stopped by Ji Jiaojiao. No one knew what they said to each other, but Lin Zai did not bother her again. After lunch break, everyone went back to work. Ji Jiaojiao had nothing to do, so she went to Wen Nanxi's side. "Sister Nanxi, I misunderstood you last time. I'm sorry. I apologize to you." When Nanxi responded indifferently and subconsciously distanced himself from her. Every failure makes one wiser. She still remembers how Ji Jiaojiao threw dirty water on her last time. Ji Jiaojiao didn't care, but smiled. "Sister Nanxi, Brother Yang doesn't really hate you. After all, you've been together for 3 years, and even if you haven't made any contributions, you've worked hard. I just said something to him last time, and he reinstated you." When Nanxi was stunned, then understood. No wonder Fu Ciyan offered to reinstate her position at the last banquet. It turned out that Ji Jiaojiao took the initiative to let her go. "Then I have to thank you. Your brother Yang really dotes on you." Ji Jiaojiao was stunned. Why was Wen Nanxi still praising her? Before she could react, Wen Nanxi forced a smile and tilted his head to look at her. "You said he dotes on you so much, why won't he divorce me to give you a legitimate status? I've told you many times to give you a position, but Fu Ciyan just won't listen and insists on dragging it out and refusing to divorce. Sai, how about you help me persuade him?" Ji Jiaojiao's face turned dark. She just showed off how much Fu Ciyan doted on her, but when Nanxi slapped her in the face. "When Nanxi, what are you so crazy about? Do you think Brother Yang loves you because he doesn't divorce you? Sooner or later he will dump you and marry me." When Nanxi shook her head, and then she realized that Ji Jiaojiao was a love-brained person. "Ji Jiaojiao, you don't have to treat me as an enemy. Fu Ciyan and I were going to get divorced anyway." After saying this, when Nanxi suddenly felt a little discouraged. It seemed that she had been unlucky for the first half of her life. She thought she had found salvation, but in fact it was just the other party's charity during her boring days. Ji Jiao, are you asking for peace with me? If you are smart enough to divorce Brother Yang, I will let you go. When Nanxi was completely speechless about this female competitive brain. Hasn't what I said been clear enough? It's your dear Brother Yang who won't let me go free. Ji Jiao gritted her teeth and said, I don't believe it. It must be you who is pestering Brother Yang. When Nanxi. This guy is mentally ill. At this time, Lisa walked out of the office and shouted. When Nanxi, Lin Zai, the two of you send me your information to register. The organizers of the Silver Moon Cup are urging us. The two people responded, and when Nanxi ignored Ji Jiao and went on with his own business. Ji Jiao's eyes rolled. Silver Moon Cup. Then she walked quickly towards the director's office. When Nanxi glanced at her back and frowned slightly. I hope nothing goes wrong. When Nanxi was busy until the end of the get-off-work day, then he stretched, packed up and left the company. The familiar Maybach was parked downstairs of the company. When Nanxi took a look and tactfully walked to the side of the road to hail a taxi. Fu Ciyan, who was sitting in the car, watched when Nanxi passed by him without stopping, and the corners of his mouth drooped. Xiao Li felt the air pressure in the car getting low, so he quickly opened the door and jogged. Madam, Mr. Fu is waiting for you in the car. When Nanxi wondered, what are you waiting for me to do? Xiao Li. Mr. Fu is here to pick you up from get off work. When Nanxi took a step to the side. You misunderstood. Fu Ciyan should be waiting for Ji Jiao. She is still behind. My car has arrived, so I'll leave first. Xiao Li, hey? Madam. When Nanxi got into a taxi and drove away. Xiao Li held out Erkang's hand, looking confused. Finally, he returned to the car dejectedly. Fu Ciyan gave him a cold look and he shuddered subconsciously. I hope his year-end bonus 1T be deducted. Follow him. Xiao Li, oh, okay. When Nanxi looked at several houses online in her free time. She didn't have any properties under her name, and it was impossible for her to return to the Wen family after her divorce from Fu Ciyan, so she had to rent a house first. According to the prenuptial agreement, she would get a sum of money after the divorce, enough for her to buy an apartment and have some left over so that she could have her own home. The agent was already waiting for her. When Nanxi got out of the car. The agent was a young man with a sweet mouth and good conversation. He praised Wen Nanxi a lot. These houses are not far from the company and the environment is also good. When Nanxi looked at two of them, but always felt that something was missing. When they wanted to watch the next few episodes, it was dark. When Nanxi felt embarrassed to let the young man work overtime, so after thinking it over, she decided to watch it next time. As soon as she walked out of the community, she saw the Maybach again. When Nanxi scratched his head and decided not to bother them and took a taxi back. As soon as she took out her cell phone, her hand was grabbed. When Nanxi was shocked. What are you doing? Why are you hiding from me? Fu Ciyan's voice was low, but when Nanxi could sense a hint of grievance for no reason. I wasn't hiding, I just didn't want to be a light bulb, it would be bad if Ji Jiao saw it. Fu Ciyan didn't understand what she meant. What does it have to do with her? I'm here to pick you up from get off work today. When Nanxi was stunned for a moment. Pick her up from get off work. It has been a long time since Fu Ciyan picked her up from get off work, almost a year. Fu Ciyan didn't give Wen Nanxi a chance to speak and directly pulled him into the car. Xiao Li was relieved to see that Fu Ciyan finally caught up with his wife. On their way home, the two looked at each other in silence. When Nanxi looked out the window, but his thoughts drifted back to the past. In the past, Fu Ciyan often picked her up from get off work and waited for her in the car just like today. At that time, people often joked that Wen Nanxi's boyfriend was too clingy. At that time, she looked forward to getting off work every day so that she could go home with him. What are you doing there today? Hearing Fu Ciyan's words, Wen Nanxi said casually. Go look for a house. You can't be homeless after getting divorced. A sneer rang out in the car. Is he so poor? He won't even give you a house.